Chapter 2604. The Yin-Yang sect was frantically searching for the culprit. On the other side, the three battle monarchs of the war tribe also looked terrible. The four battle monarchs were in contact with each other. Not long ago, they received news from Jianghu that he had found traces of him. However, they could not contact Jianghu. Damn it, something had happened. The three battle monarchs looked grave. They hurriedly charged in the direction and location that Jianghu had given them. Lin Xian and the dark red divine dragon entered the black earth and let it fly. The two of them searched the storage room of the Yin-Yang saint. Lin Xian was very interested in the Yin-Yang saint's chaotic Yin-Yang steps. He wanted to see if there was such a cultivation technique in the storage ring. Indeed there was. Lin Xian was overjoyed. When his soul entered the storage ring, he found many martial arts manuals. One of the manuals was the chaotic Yin-Yang steps. It was an expensive superior-grade cultivation technique. No wonder it was so powerful. His demigods and semi-devils was also very magical. However, he had only obtained the first half of it. He had already mastered it. If he could not find the second half, it would be difficult for his speed to increase greatly. However, if he cultivated the chaotic Yin-Yang steps, it would be different. After all, the superior-grade heaven-grade cultivation technique was very terrifying. If he wanted to master it, his speed could increase further. Therefore, Lin Xian decided to cultivate the chaotic Yin-Yang steps. He opened the cultivation technique and skimmed through it. Then he took a deep breath. He realized that he had underestimated the chaotic Yin-Yang steps. The chaotic Yin-Yang steps was very terrifying. It was said that when cultivated to perfection, one could reverse the void. This was definitely a terrifying mystique. However, superior-grade heaven-grade cultivation techniques were very difficult to cultivate. Lin Xian knew this. Therefore he was not in a hurry. In addition to the chaotic Yin-Yang steps, the Yin-Yang saint also had many precious divine crystals and treasures in his storage ring. Lin Xian threw these to the dark red divine dragon and started cultivating. Outside, the black earth flew quickly. About 2 days later, a voice came from the black earth. "Kit, something is wrong ahead. Do you still want to continue?" Lin Xian opened his eyes. His figure flickered and appeared outside the black earth. Then he frowned. At the side, the dark red divine dragon also said, "The aura around here is so strange. Why does it give me the creeps?" Lin Xian's expression was solemn as well. His flaming robe enveloped him. The great dragon sword soul in his body circulated to resist the terrifying pressure. Could it be a forbidden land of death? Lin Xian was shocked. He now knew that the true spirit world had several forbidden lands of death. Even unrivaled kings didn't dare to enter them, and no one dared to talk about them. Perhaps this was one of the places of death. However, the dark red divine dragon shook its head. "That's not right. There's no place of death in this area." "Wait, what is this place?" The dark god dragon took out the map and looked at it. Then he exclaimed in shock. "To think that he would be here. Where is this place?" Lin Xian asked. The dark red divine dragon took a deep breath. Although this wasn't the forbidden death zone, it was still an extremely terrifying place. This place should be very close to Black Demon Cliff. Black Demon Cliff, what kind of place is that? Lin Xian was puzzled. The place where a saint fell. Moreover, it was an extremely terrifying sword saint who fell here. It was rumored that the stunning Nine-Sun Sword Saint had fallen here. This Nine-Sun Sword Saint was very powerful. It was said that he had the potential to become a great emperor. But in the end he was still killed. What? There was such a history? Lin Xian was shocked when he heard this. He looked around and was extremely shocked. An extremely powerful sword saint had fallen here. No wonder he felt that the surrounding space was much sharper than other places. Who killed the Nine-Sun Sword Saint? He didn't dare to imagine. The dark red divine dragon shook its head. It didn't know. It was said that it was an extremely terrifying demon saint. "Kid, this place is too strange. This is the place where a peerless sword saint fell. We must not go near it." Lin Xian nodded in agreement. He decided to take a stroll around the vicinity and experience the wonders of Black Demon Cliff before preparing to leave. The two of them walked around for about tens of thousands of miles. At this moment, Lin Xian suddenly stopped. The dark red divine dragon also frowned because the path ahead had been blocked by a figure. It was a man standing in the void with a cold expression. He held a giant axe in his hand that felt as heavy as a mountain. His eyes were like divine light. There was no emotion in them. They were filled with cold killing intent. His long golden hair danced in the air like golden flames. Seeing the long golden hair, Lin Xian frowned. The dark red divine dragon muttered softly, "Why does he look like someone from the war tribe? Kid, are you that Lin Xian?" The imposing figure in front asked coldly. That's right, I am. Lin Xian asked in return. Who are you? Why are you blocking my way? I am the Sky Axe War King of the War Tribe. A loud voice resounded in all directions. As expected, he's from the War Tribe. Hearing this name, Lin Xian and the Dark Red Divine Dragon both frowned. They did not expect that there would be another elite from the War Tribe besides Zhang Wuhan. The aura of the tall figure in front of them was not any weaker than Zhang Wuhan. The Sky Axe War King said in a deep voice. Where is Zhang Wuhan? How did you escape from him? He was very surprised. Logically speaking, with Zhang Wuhan's strength and trump cards, it should not be a problem to kill the other party. But now they could not contact Zhang Wuhan. Could it be? They did not dare to think about the result. How did he escape? By killing him, of course. Su Qin sneered. I advise you to hurry back to the War Tribe. Otherwise, you will end up like him. How dare you? Kid, you are courting death. How dare you say you killed Zhang Wuhan? That's impossible. The Sky Axe War King shook his head coldly. He did not believe it. You can try whether I have the strength or not. Lin Xian did not waste any time and directly attacked with the ancient dragon abyss sword. How dare you attack me? You are courting death. The Sky Axe War King's expression was cold as he raised the giant axe in his hand. The giant axe emitted thousands of rays of light and directly cut through the void. The axe was too terrifying. It was as if it was a divine axe that could split the heavens. It carried with it an unparalleled power. When the axe came down, it was extremely domineering. It was as if a giant mountain was crashing down from the sky. Boom. The space in front of Lin Xian was instantly blasted apart. Lin Xian and the Dark Red Divine Dragon's pupils shrank as they quickly retreated. Boom. They were swept by the shockwave and felt the blood in their bodies churning. Damn, this guy's strength is terrifying. The Dark Red Divine Dragon also had lingering fears. Even though his defense was strong, he still felt his heart skip a beat. Lin Xian's expression was also grave. 5 elemental swords, 5 swords seal the sky. Lin Xian waved the ancient dragon abyss sword. Suddenly, 5 huge swords of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth appeared in the sky, connecting heaven and earth. They descended from the sky. Chapter 2605. The 5 elemental swords connected with each other, forming a terrifying 5 elemental sword formation that sealed the Sky Axe battleship. At the same time, he used Flower Protector, and the terrifying sound waves surged toward the 5 elemental sword formation. That demonic sound made people's expressions change. As expected, the Sky Axe battleship sensed the terrifying demonic sound, and his expression changed. He waved the giant axe in his hand and slashed in all directions to resist the demonic sound. Flower Protector. It was the legendary Flower Protector. Kid, I didn't expect you to have such a thing. No wonder you could escape from Zhang Wuhan's pursuit. The Sky Axe battleship had heard of ancient weapons like Flower Protector. However, he didn't expect Lin Fan to have it. Flower Protector is powerful, but you can't fully use it with your current strength. I think it has several layers of seals. Do you think that you can threaten me with just this kind of power? The Sky Axe battleship sneered. If an invincible king or sage attacked him with Flower Protector, he would not be able to resist. But his opponent? He was not afraid at all. In the next moment he would use his giant axe. One axe to destroy the sky. Boom. A huge crack appeared on the 5 elemental sword formation, and then it shattered. The Sky Axe battleship charged out. At this moment, the Sky Axe battleship was filled with murderous intent. He walked in the sky like a mighty god. The axe fell, tearing through the void, intending to cut Lin Xian in half. Clang. Lin Xian raised his sword to block. The long sword slashed across the sky, and the terrifying sword light illuminated the entire sky. Under the attack, the void cracked open, and a huge crack spread over 10,000 meters. It was a terrifying sight. Boom. The giant axe was blocked, but the Sky Axe battleship did not stop attacking. He clenched his left hand into a fist and punched out. A golden light shot into the sky like the sun, carrying with it an incomparably powerful force. Heavenly Divine Fist. The Sky Axe battleship used the Heavenly Divine Fist, the Heavenly Divine Fist. Seeing this, Lin Xian was stunned for a moment, then he sneered. He also clenched his left hand into a fist and punched forward like a shooting star. Bang. The 2 fists collided with a deafening sound. With the 2 of them as the center, more and more cracks appeared in the space around them. In the next moment, the 2 of them retreated several miles, stepping on the void. Qi and blood in their bodies churned, and their arms went numb. Lin Xian snorted coldly as he channeled the art of longevity and the great dragon sword spirit within his body to recover his strength. On the other side, the Sky Axe Battle Monarch raised his head, his pupils constricting. Damn it, why do you know the Heavenly Divine Fist? He was fist. But how was that? What he used was the War Clan's absolute art. Aside from their War Clan's martial artists, no one else knew it. Not everyone was divine fist was. Apart from a few elders and geniuses, only the 4 battle kings knew how to do it. Heavenly God, as technique fist. Divines as he did not battleship, but the axe battleship. The Sky Axe Warlord's pupils shrank. Could it be that Jianghu had really been killed? Axe's axe. But if Axe Battleship had not been killed, how could he know the Heavenly Divine Fist? He must have taken Axe Battleship's storage ring. Battleship's face darkened at that thought. Considering the current situation and the fact that they could not contact Axe Battleship was most likely dead. Damn kid, I don't know how you killed Axe Battleship, but you've committed a heinous crime. Go to hell and repent. The Sky Axe Battleship swung his axe again. This time he used his bloodline power. The empty palace was shaking, and Lin Xian's heart was also trembling violently. He realized that the Sky Axe Battleship was stronger than Axe Battleship. At the very least, he was stronger than Axe Battleship. Lin Xian opened the 5 seals on the Molten Dragon Abyss Sword. His combat strength increased again and he charged forward. After an intense collision, streaks of terrifying sword light flashed across the sky. Sometimes it turned into lightning, sometimes it turned into the power of the 5 elements, and sometimes it turned into a sky full of chaotic chi. The Sky Axe Battlemaster was forced to retreat. It was as if the heavens and earth had been split apart. His entire arm was numb and he could not feel it. The Sky Axe Battleship was shocked. His opponent's combat strength was so strong that he could even suppress him. Damn it, get lost. Bloodline runes appeared on his body, and his strength soared. He forced Lin Xian back. He had gained the upper hand again. However, he was soon sent flying. That was because a dragon-shaped sword shadow that was 1,000 miles long had flown down from the sky and collided with his huge axe, sending it flying. His entire body was sent flying backwards. The Sky Axe Battleship only stopped after flying for a few thousand miles. He made a grabbing motion with his hand, which blotted out the sun, and grabbed the giant axe that had fallen to the ground. At the same time, the bones in his body let out cracking sounds as they quickly reconnected. He stared ahead with a murderous look. Lin Xian looked at him and said coldly, "I told you you can't do it. Kid, don't be so smug. This time the battle tribe has sent 4 battle kings. In addition to me and Jianghu, 2 other battle kings are on their way here. This time you will definitely die." What? 2 battle kings? Hearing this, Lin Xian frowned. The dark red dragon's eyelids twitched. Damn, the battle tribe is too shameless. You sent 4,000-year-old monsters to kill a late-stage prodigy? You've really embarrassed yourselves. To be honest, he was furious. Lin Xian was also filled with murderous intent. You sent 4 battle kings to kill me? You really think too highly of me. However, the 2 battle kings probably won't be here anytime soon. The battle tribe likes to fight with numbers. Today I'll let you have a taste of how it feels to fight with numbers. Ruffian Dragon, attack together. Don't hold back. Beat him up. Lin Xian was truly enraged. The other party was simply too shameless. Since that was the case, there was no need for him to show mercy. The dark red dragon walked over and laughed. Great, I love drinking the blood of the battle tribe's elites. Indeed, the blood of the battle tribe's elites contained the power of the bloodline, which was very helpful to him. What can a snake do to me? The Sky Axe Battle King snorted disdainfully. Snake my ass. The dark red dragon roared. With a sway of his body, he transformed into a giant dragon that was thousands of feet long. He bared his fangs and brandished his claws, filling the entire sky. His aura also erupted in an instant. It was as if countless giant mountains were pressing down on him. The surrounding void began to shatter rapidly. Brr. A dragon roar resounded, and the dragon flames that filled the sky descended from the sky, turning into huge fireballs. They brought with them surging flames as they descended. In an instant, the Sky Axe Battle King was engulfed. Bang, bang, bang. The Sky Axe Battle King waved his giant axe to fight back. However, he had underestimated the flames. They were as terrifying as divine flames. Chapter 2606. Die. The Sky Axe Battle Monarch roared. 18 giant axes rushed out from his body and extinguished the flames around him. However, his body was charred black and he was in a sorry state. Damn it. The Sky Axe Battle Monarch's face turned gloomy. He realized that the snake's strength was not any weaker than his. This would be troublesome. His life would be in danger if he was attacked by two people who were on par with him. He was not a fool. He decided to retreat. When the other two battle monarchs arrived, the three battle monarchs would attack together. But how could he escape? Lin Xian and the dark red divine dragon had their eyes on him. The Sky Axe Battle Monarch would not be able to escape with the help of two peerless experts. Under the gaze of Lin Xian and the crimson divine dragon, the Sky Axe warlord trembled as a chill ran down his spine. Damn it, these two guys are not going to let me go. With a roar, he waved the giant axe in his hand to fight back. However, he was no match for the two of them. Bam! A shattering sound came from the void. Like a meteor, he was blasted away, spraying a large amount of blood in the sky. Bam! 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 The Sky Axe Battle Monarch was indeed powerful. Even though he was injured, he seized the opportunity to escape. The blood was the blood of the battle tribe and contained the power of bloodline. He used a secret technique and turned it into a blood-colored dragon. It wrapped around him and tried to tear the void apart to escape. Lin Xian's long sword slashed across the sky. The huge sword light was like a heavenly monument. It crushed the void and sent the blood-colored dragon flying. Bam! The Sky Axe Battle Monarch vomited blood and was sent flying. Crack! At this time, the dark red divine dragon also attacked. It waved two heaven-grade artifacts in its hands and attacked the Sky Axe Battle Monarch. Even though the Sky Axe battleship was clad in formidable armor and an ancient shield, he was still sent tumbling on the ground. A loud dragon roar was heard. The great dragon sword soul had completely exploded. It turned into a dragon star sword shadow and attacked. The ancient shield was split in half. The dark red dragon's claws roared and slammed into the armor, shattering the Sky Axe battleship's armor. Poof! Large chunks of the Sky Axe Battle King's bones were broken. His flesh was clawed up by the dragon's claws and scattered in the air. Lin Xian slashed out with his sword, directly chopping off one of his arms. In the blink of an eye, the Sky Axe warlord was severely injured and almost died. He roared like a madman, but there was no one around. As for the other two battle kings, they wouldn't be able to make it in time either. At that moment, despair filled his heart. It was the same despair that Jianghu had felt earlier. Because they were too arrogant. In their eyes, the other party was just a brat, an ant-like existence. They did not put him in their hearts at all. But now they realized that they were gravely mistaken. Not only were the two people in front of them not ants, but they were also terrifying dragons that could threaten their lives. Damn it, you can't kill me. I am the Battle Clan's fourth Great War Prince. If you kill me, the war race won't let you off. The Sky Axe Battle Monarch was finally afraid. He no longer had the arrogance and haughtiness from before. At this moment, he quickly begged for mercy. Lin Xian sneered. Won't let me off? Do you think that the war race will let me off if I don't kill you? What a joke. Ignorant. Now you can go to hell and accompany Jianghu. Lin Xian took out the sage's hand bone. The dark red dragon also took out the broken pagoda. The Sky Axe Battle Monarch was shocked when he saw the broken pagoda. That was Jianghu's Dharma treasure. Now he was finally sure that Jianghu had been killed. Damn it. His face instantly turned green. There was no way he could withstand two sages' broken pagoda. Boom. Heaven and earth collapsed. Everything within a million miles was reduced to nothingness. When everything returned to normal, the Sky Axe Battle Monarch's body fell to the ground. His body was in pieces and his armor was shattered. His blood flowed like a river. His life, including his soul, had been completely annihilated. The Battle Monarch of the war race was just SOSO. The dark red dragon looked at this scene and sneered. He took off the Sky Axe Battle Monarch's storage ring and threw it to Lin Xian. At the same time, he opened his mouth and swallowed the Sky Axe Battle Monarch's body. Far away, the other two battle monarchs quickly rushed over. All of a sudden, one of the jades in their hands exploded. Oh no, the Sky Axe Battle Monarch had an accident. Seeing this, the two of them roared madly. Damn it! Damn it! They did not know why the Sky Axe Battle Monarch had an accident after Jianghu. This was unbelievable. Therefore, the two of them decided to meet up first and then kill their way over. The two of them quickly met up. Lin Xian collected the spoils of war and then turned to leave. They did not go far because Lin Xian wanted to explore Black Demon Cliff. What? Hearing this, the dark red dragon trembled. "Kid, do you want to die?" He really did not want to go in. However, Lin Xian said, "I feel that there is a sharp sword intent between heaven and earth. If I can comprehend it, it will be of great help to my path of the sword." Indeed, Lin Xian was very talented in the way of the sword and had reached a very high level. Very few people of the same level could match him in the way of the sword. Not even the elders of the sacred grounds. But now, when he arrived at Black Demon Cliff, he found that the sword aura around him was much stronger. It was countless times stronger than his. Because it was left behind by the 9 Sun Sword Sage. Back in the day, the 9 Sun Sword Saint was so powerful that he defied the heavens. Tens of thousands of years had passed since his death, but the aura of his sword Dao still remained. One could imagine how terrifying the 9 Sun Sword Sage's sword was. This was an endless treasure trove for Lin Xian. Although it was a little dangerous. But Lin Xian felt that he still wanted to explore. Of course, he promised the Dark Red Dragon that he would not enter the depths of Black Demon Cliff and would only walk around the periphery. Hearing this promise, the Dark Red Dragon heaved a sigh of relief. Because this place was too strange, the great sage did not dare to ask about it easily, and the invincible kings would not come here for no reason. "Alright, let's walk around the periphery." The Dark Red Dragon accompanied Lin Xian and set off forward. When the two of them walked for 10,000 miles, the surrounding spiritual aura suddenly became stronger. There were fine sword waves wandering in the air. At the same time, there was a black demonic aura circling in the air. The two auras existed in the world at the same time. These sword waves should have been left behind by the 9 Sun Sword Sage, but what was this black demonic aura? Could it be left behind by the demon sage who killed the 9 Sun Sword Sage? Heavens, who was the other party? How could he kill the sword sage? Sensing the surrounding aura energy, Lin Xian was shocked. The Dark Red Dragon stood at the side and said, "Kid, do you see those broken mountains in the distance? It is said that they were collapsed by a drop of blood pressure." Chapter 2607. The blood of a sage could be passed down, and it was extremely terrifying. It contained fragments of the laws, and it was said that a drop of a sage's blood could easily kill a peerless powerhouse. In fact, even an invincible king would not dare to touch it. Lin Xian stood there, silently comprehending. However, the demonic aura in front of him quickly rolled and turned into black beasts that pounced towards him. Demonic aura. The aura of the Devil Saint, even after tens of thousands of years, still possessed such a terrifying divine ability. The Dark Red Divine Dragon was shocked when he saw this. Indeed, the demonic aura formed beasts that were abnormally terrifying. Each of them bared their fangs and brandished their claws as they charged towards Lin Xian and the Dark Red Divine Dragon. Before they arrived, the boundless demonic aura that carried with it a violent and destructive aura had already made Lin Xian and the Dark Red Divine Dragon's blood boil. "Damn it, get out of my way!" Lin Xian roared and slashed out with his sword. But soon his expression changed. This was because he realized that this slash did not achieve the effect that he had expected. There was no terrifying sword light that rushed out. "Damn it, what's going on?" Lin Xian was surprised. The Dark Red Divine Dragon also exclaimed, "Why do I feel like I'm being suppressed? No wonder it's called the ominous place. It's really strange. Kid, let's go." The Dark Red Dragon swung its tail, shattering the void and sending a few demonic beasts flying. Lin Xian also frowned. "Am I being suppressed?" He tried again and realized that his sword chi was indeed being suppressed. The 9 Sun Sword Saint's sword intent was too powerful. Other swordsmen and kings would definitely be suppressed here. Not only the 9 Sun Sword Saint, but there was also an even more terrifying demon saint. The demonic aura that he emitted could suppress other kings. Therefore, when one came to the Black Demon Cliff, their strength would be greatly reduced by half. No wonder it was called the ominous place. Indeed, even before entering, just standing at the edge was already so terrifying. Lin Xian took a deep breath, but his eyes were shining with excitement. His sword chi being suppressed was also a form of cultivation for him. He immediately pulled out the ancient dragon abyss sword and charged forward. So what if there was no sword chi? With Lin Xian's strength, it was still very terrifying. Lin Xian and the Dark Red Divine Dragon worked together to kill all the demonic beasts formed by the demonic chi. Buzz roar. After the demonic chi shattered, it did not disappear. Instead, it quickly gathered together to form a huge monster. It was 300 meters tall, and its entire body was pitch black, emitting a terrifying demonic aura. The demonic chi condensed into a gigantic bull demon king. It was indomitable and possessed boundless strength. He held a huge black axe in his hand and swung it down. With a chop of the axe, the heavens collapsed and the earth split apart. Lin Xian felt as if his body was about to explode. He roared, and the great dragon sword soul in his body roared rapidly, suppressing the churning blood. At the same time he tapped his foot and quickly retreated. The ancient dragon abyss sword swung out, bringing with it the power of Mount Tai, smashing over. When it collided with the huge black axe, countless sparks flew and pierced through the void. Lin Xian was forced back a few steps. The black demonic bull roared into the sky. What terrifying strength! Lin Xian was shocked. He had to admit that he was surprised that his opponent could force him back. Although he was being suppressed, his power wasn't something that ordinary almighties could withstand. However, the Black Bull Demon King was unharmed. In fact, it even had the upper hand. From the looks of it, it had surpassed the ordinary almighty. While Lin Xian was in danger, on the other side, the dark red divine dragon was also roaring. Because on his side there were also 8 or 9 black shadows. Each of them turned into a black python and attacked him quickly. Under normal circumstances, the dark red divine dragon would not be afraid of these at all. But now, his cultivation strength was also suppressed. So now he was also locked in a fierce battle. Damn it, get lost or I'll use the sage fragment. The dark red divine dragon roared. When had he ever been bullied by a few pythons? However, at this moment Lin Xian said, "Ruffian dragon, don't use the sage fragment. Use your own strength to attack. This is a good opportunity to hone your battle skills." Damn kid, are you crazy? Why do I feel that you're even more battle-hungry than those lunatics from the war tribe? The dark red divine dragon's mouth twitched. Lin Xian was very excited. He held his sword and attacked again. At this moment he repeatedly used the 9-fold thunder sword and the heaven-battling divine fist. He no longer used the demonic 8 tribes but the chaotic yin-yang steps. This was because it was best to practice these heaven-grade cultivation techniques in a real battle. Sure enough, although Lin Xian was at a disadvantage and was even sent flying a few times, he was still able to practice his skills. But he was becoming more and more familiar with the 3 heaven-grade cultivation techniques. Not only that, but Lin Xian also used the chaotic heaven destroyer sword and the 5-element sword. He wanted to see if he could comprehend something new from these 2 sword techniques. Just like that, Lin Xian used his ultimate techniques one by one to hone them in battle. In the end, the huge ox demon was killed by him. With a wail, the ox demon fell to the ground and turned into countless wisps of demonic chi that rolled away. On the other side, the 8 pythons were all torn in half by the dark red divine dragon. Kid, hurry up and leave. Otherwise, the demonic chi will continue to transform. There's no end to it. The dark red divine dragon hurriedly flew over and nodded. Lin Xian nodded. He wanted to see what was ahead. Therefore, the 2 of them tapped their feet and quickly flew forward. Bus, bus, bus. After crossing a mountain they arrived at a valley. Suddenly Lin Xian and the dark red divine dragon retreated. Their pupils constricted when they smashed through the void. Lin Xian was even more shocked. The great dragon sword soul in his body kept roaring. What a powerful sword intent. He was too shocked. This was because they had just climbed over the mountain and had yet to reach the valley when a peerless sword intent that could tear apart the world rushed out from the valley. It was as if it wanted to split them in half. What a terrifying sword intent. A golden light appeared in Lin Xian's eyes. He activated his heavenly secret divine eyes and looked ahead. Stone swords were stabbed into the ground in the valley in front of them, and every single one of them was embedded in the ground. Some of them only revealed the hilt, while others revealed a section of the sword. There were thousands of them densely packed together. And in the middle of these stone swords, there were many figures walking back and forth. They were wearing different clothes, but without exception their eyes were hollow, and they carried a huge stone sword on their back. They were like patrolling guards that kept walking in the valley. There's someone here? How can there be anyone here? Seeing this scene, Lin Xian was shocked. He looked at the dark red divine dragon. The dark red divine dragon's eyes flickered. He thought for a moment, then clapped his dragon claws and said, "I know. These must be the legendary sword slaves." Sword slaves? What are those? Lin Xian was puzzled. The dark red divine dragon said, "Do you think we're the only ones who want to come here?" The Black Demon Cliff was very famous. Not only the central continent knew about it, but all 5 continents of the true spirit world knew about it. Chapter 2608. The 9-Sun Sword Saint had the 9-Sun body and cultivated the 9-Sun Sword technique. It could be said that these 2 things were enough to make people jealous. If one could obtain the inheritance of the 9-Sun Sword Saint, they would definitely become a saint. They might even become the second nine-sun sword saint. Therefore, for tens of thousands of years, countless people had come here in search of opportunities to obtain the inheritance of the nine-sun sword saint. Among them, there was no lack of powerful peerless swordsmen and invincible kings. But in the end, without exception, none of them came out. In the end, an extremely terrifying living fossil with a terrifying saint's weapon figured it out. It turned out that the powerful people who had entered before were all controlled by the nine-sun sword saint's sword intent and became sword slaves. They were enslaved by the Sword Council for generations to protect the entire Black Demon Cliff. What? Sword intent can control people? Lin Xian sucked in a breath of cold air. The nine-sun sword saint was too terrifying. However, what were the nine-sun sword technique and nine-sun divine body? Lin Xian was very surprised. The nine-sun sword technique was an extremely terrifying sword technique. It was extremely tough and terrifying. The nine-sun divine body was a body-tempering technique. It was rumored that after cultivating this physique, it would not be weaker than the Yi family's saint body. More importantly, cultivating the nine-yang divine body did not require the power of a bloodline. This greatly encouraged those who did not have bloodline power. However, these two divine abilities and cultivation methods had been lost for a long time. It was said that they were hidden in Black Demon Cliff. However, no one could take them out. After hearing the entire news, Lin Xian was stunned. His eyes burned with passion. The nine-sun divine body that was comparable to a saint body and the unparalleled nine-sun sword technique. Both of these things were very tempting. If he could obtain them, Lin Xian was excited. However, the dark red dragon beside him said, "Kid, I advise you not to think about it. Even invincible kings can't come out. Let alone you. Although you have the great dragon sword spirit and the heavenly secret divine eyes, your current cultivation is still too weak. If you really want to go, wait until you become an invincible king and bring the saint's treasure. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't have been able to get out." Lin Xian's expression was solemn. Indeed, the dark red divine dragon was right. The terror of a saint was far beyond his imagination. Therefore, he was only thinking about the two earth-shattering treasures. However, he could go in and investigate the valley below. He also wanted to see how powerful a sword slave controlled by the nine-yang sword intent was. Lin Xian and the dark red divine dragon activated their defenses and walked down. As they approached the valley, they felt immense pressure. However, the two of them could still bear it. From the moment they stepped foot into the gorge, all the sword servants in the ancient times stopped moving and turned around. Wisps of terrifying sword light appeared in his originally empty eyes. Brr. Furious roars resounded as the sword slaves strode towards Lin Xian and the dark red divine dragon. Terrifying sword chi surged from their bodies. It was abnormally sharp, causing people to tremble. Before he could even get close, the surrounding space had already shattered. Luckily, there were no invincible king-level sword slaves in this valley. Otherwise, he would have run away long ago. The dark red divine dragon looked around and found that most of these sword slaves had the cultivation of almighties. There were quite a few almighties. However, there were no invincible king-level sword slaves. This made him secretly heave a sigh of relief. Even if an invincible king-level sword slave became one, the two of them probably wouldn't be able to fight against it for the time being. Even these sword slaves in front of them were giving them a headache. Lin Xian, who was at the side, was excited. He waved the ancient dragon abyss sword and once again used the ninefold thunder, the five-form sword, and the chaotic heaven destroyer sword. All kinds of sword techniques surged out and clashed with the sword slaves. Boom, boom. All kinds of sword techniques flew in the sky. It was very dazzling. If someone was here, their jaw would definitely drop. Because whether it was Lin Xian or the sword slaves, the sword techniques used were too terrifying. So terrifying. The power of the purest yang could pierce through everything. This was the nine-yang sword intent. Lin Xian was shocked. Just a wisp of sword intent could erupt with such power. If it was the real nine-yang sword technique, how terrifying would it be? He didn't know, but he was very excited. However, his great dragon sword soul was even more powerful. Its attack power was number one, and it wasn't just for show. Although Lin Xian couldn't unleash the full power of the great dragon sword soul now, just its current power was already very heaven-defying. Therefore, for a moment, he fought with the 6 sword slaves with ease. Fuck, what a pervert. The 1-pound dark red divine dragon grimaced. He didn't have any superb sword techniques, but he had dragon's divine abilities. Therefore, he also had a lot of fun fighting with those sword slaves. 1 day passed, 2 days passed, and 10 days passed. For 10 whole days, Lin Xian was fighting. He had the longevity art, so the amount of spiritual power he stored was more than others. Moreover, he absorbed it very quickly. Even if the surrounding spiritual energy couldn't fill it, he still had many natural treasures and divine crystals in his hands for him to absorb. Lin Xin wasn't stingy at all now, so he didn't use these resources recklessly. These resources were originally for him to cultivate. Now that he had so many sword slaves to practice with, how could he give up this opportunity? His ninefold thundersword technique was improving at an extremely fast speed. 3 months later, with a boom, Lin Xin's body flashed with lightning as the ninefold thundersword technique entered the second level. But the power of his sword technique had increased exponentially. The bolts of lightning sword chi were even more violent than before. They instantly blasted the 6 sword servants around him away. This is great. He broke through. Lin Xin was overjoyed. These 3 months were indeed not in vain. The dark red divine dragon at the side rolled its eyes. In these 3 months, it had already rested 3 times. It wasn't as desperate as Lin Xin. For the past 3 months, Lin Xin had not rested at all. However, Lin Xin's improvement surprised the dark red divine dragon. The ninefold thundersword technique was a heaven-class technique. Although it was only at the initial stage of the heaven-class technique, it was very difficult to cultivate in addition to being powerful. However, in just 3 months, Lin Xin had cultivated to the second level. The dark red divine dragon had never seen such talent in swordsmanship before. It reckoned that Lin Xin was already comparable to those freaks in ancient times. Even without the great dragon sword soul, Lin Xin would probably be a peerless swordsman with his talent. The dark red divine dragon's eyes flickered. This kid might really be able to embark on the path of becoming a great emperor. However, it didn't know how far he could go in the end. The path of becoming a great emperor was too difficult. Even with the great dragon sword soul, one couldn't be 100% sure that one could become a great emperor in the end. After all, the great dragon sword soul had been passed down to Lin Xin for close to 5 or 6 generations. However, the dark red divine dragon only knew of great Emperor Shiman who had become a great emperor with the great dragon sword soul. Chapter 2609. Of course, the true spirit world was vast and mysterious. Although the dragon sword soul was powerful, there were some things that were not weaker than the dragon sword soul. For example, the most powerful bloodline, the various constitutions, or other divine swords. In short, the Battle of the Emperor's Road was a very cruel thing. On the other hand, Lin Xin put away his long sword and slowly exhaled. In the past 3 months, not only had he reached the second stage of the ninefold thunder sword, but he had also become more proficient in the chaotic yin-yang steps. Lin Xin also had a certain understanding of how terrifying the nine-yang sword intent was. He decided to retreat from the valley and rest for a while. After all, even someone as powerful as him could not withstand 3 months of continuous battles. However, just as he was about to retreat, another figure walked out in front of him. It was also a young man wearing an ancient robe. He seemed to be from the ancient times. Moreover, he was also a sword slave. However, the sword intent on his body was much stronger than that of an ordinary sword slave. In fact, he was almost an invincible king. This person was terrifying. In the ancient times, he must have been a peerless genius. Lin Xin was shocked. This person looked very young, but his cultivation was so strong that it surprised him. Such a person was reduced to a sword slave. He gasped. He did not know what these people had encountered. If he encountered them, would he also be reduced to a sword slave? He did not know. The dark red divine dragon also jumped up. He said, "Kid, be careful. The sword slave in front of you is not simple." Lin Xin nodded. He could also see it. As soon as the young sword slave appeared, the surrounding sword slaves all retreated in fear. This was something that had never happened before. Ka, the young sword slave pulled out a black longsword from his waist and pointed it forward. The sword intent on his body suddenly burst out and pierced the surrounding sky. Then he turned into an afterimage and charged toward Lin Xin. Lin Xian's pupils shrank. He used the chaotic yin-yang steps and quickly dodged. As soon as he left, 18 sword marks appeared where he was originally standing, cutting the ground into pieces. But, seeing that his first attack had failed, the young sword slave made another move. The long sword swept across, bringing with it a blazing aura as it slashed over. It was like a sun flying rapidly in the sky. What is this? The power of the nine-yang sword intent. This guy was actually able to use the power of sword intent. The Crimson Dragon exclaimed. Lin Xian's expression darkened as well. As expected, this young sword slave wasn't ordinary. His body swayed in the air as he dodged the sword. At the same time, he quickly rushed over and used the ninefold thunder sword. Streaks of lightning sword chi flashed in the sky. Coupled with the power of the great dragon sword soul, the sky was instantly torn apart. 7 bolts of lightning sword chi formed a lotus in the sky and enveloped the young sword slave. Then the lightning sword chi exploded, wanting to penetrate the other party. Buzz, the young sword slave, raised his sword high, and a bright light burst out from it. With a slash of the sword, the thunder lotus was shattered. Then he strode out. At this moment, his eyes were sharp and his black hair fluttered in the wind. It was as if he had come alive. The black sword in his hand swept out with the force of Mount Tai. Boom! The space where Lin Xian was exploded, and countless sword chi enveloped him. Damn, this sword slave is so powerful. The crimson dragon at the side swallowed its saliva as it watched. This sword slave was much more powerful and terrifying than the average saint. He had even reached the level of a top-notch saint. Damn it, could it be that he was really a saint in ancient times? Lin Xian and the young sword slave fought until the sky collapsed and the earth cracked. The entire valley was trembling. Even the sky in front of them couldn't be seen at all. Only the bright sword chi shot up into the sky. There was also a sea of lightning in the sky. Buzz. Boom. Finally, Lin Xian changed his sword technique again. He no longer used the 9-fold thunder sword but the 5-element sword, chaos sword, and sky destroyer sword. All kinds of killing moves were used, and the great dragon sword soul kept roaring. Dragon shadows rushed out one after another. Boom. 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 That young sword slave was sent flying and crashed into the ground, creating a terrifying crater. Lin Xian descended from the sky. His black hair fluttered in the wind, and he was unstoppable like a sword god. He looked forward with a smile on his face. His opponent was very powerful, but he was still no match for him. Boom. 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 Suddenly the entire valley trembled and the ground cracked open. A huge stone sword pierced out from the ground. It continued to spread, and the entire ground within a radius of tens of thousands of miles seemed to be torn apart by a pair of large hands. Seeing this scene, Lin Xian and the Crimson Divine Dragon rose into the air. They looked ahead and saw the shocking changes. Their expressions were extremely serious. What happened? Could it be that something even more terrifying was coming out? Damn it, could it be a sword slave at the level of an invincible king? If that was the case, the two of them wouldn't be able to defeat it. The two of them circulated their energy. As long as the situation was not right, they would leave at any time. Buzz. At this moment, a hazy figure suddenly appeared under the huge stone sword and sat there cross-legged. That figure was very mysterious and had a supreme aura. There were even divine chains of order around him that were intertwining. Seeing this, the Crimson Dragon screamed. A sage. He was scared out of his wits. Lin Xian was also shocked. The great dragon sword soul in his body was about to explode at any time. He looked forward. Was that a sage? It was too terrifying. He had seen the corpse of a sage before, and there were 2 of them. However, although the corpse was terrifying, there were many invincible kings with heaven-defying weapons at that time. Therefore Lin Xian did not have a direct feeling. But now there was only him and the Crimson Dragon. Facing the light figure in front of him, he felt that it was too terrifying. In fact, he couldn't even breathe. It was just a light figure. It was not a sage. It should be an afterimage or a clone. Lin Xian took a deep breath. The Crimson Dragon also said that. Yes, it was just that he did not know what it wanted to do. Kid, get ready to enter the Black Earth. The 2 of us can't withstand it. Lin Xian put away the ancient sword and respectfully cupped his fists. Junior greets Senior. I have no intention of disturbing Senior. I just want to see the Black Demon Cliff and the legendary 9-yang sword chi. If I disturb Senior, I will leave immediately. How many years has it been? Finally someone came in. In front of them, the light figure slowly spoke. His voice was abnormally low and carried a supreme divine might. Every word made the blood in Lin Xian and the Crimson Dragon's body tumble. Their bodies were about to split open. Fortunately, one of them had the great dragon sword soul, and the other was an ancient dragon. Only then could they resist this pressure. I seem to feel a familiar aura. Chapter 26:10. Lin Yunxuan's body tensed up as if his body had been seen through. At this moment he had no secrets in front of the other party. The power of the great dragon sword soul? No wonder it was so familiar. He didn't expect it to be the successor of the great dragon sword soul. Lin Xian was extremely shocked when he heard the glowing figure's words. He didn't expect his biggest secret to be seen through by the other party. The dark red dragon was also nervous. What did the other party want? Could it be that the other party wanted to steal the great dragon sword soul? But the other party was already dead and had been dead for tens of thousands of years. What was the point of stealing the great dragon sword soul? Don't worry, I'm just a broken clone. Young man, since you've come here and met me, it means that you're fated. Now I'll teach you the cultivation method of the divine nine-yang body. What? The cultivation method of the divine nine-yang body? Lin Xian was shocked when he heard this. He felt like his heart was about to jump out of his chest. Senior, is this true? The dark red dragon beside him was also drooling. Damn, this kid's luck is too heaven-defying. He actually encountered the cultivation method of the divine nine-yang body. If he succeeded, it would not lose to the divine nine-yang body. In the future, this kid's physique would be so strong that it defied the heavens. This is indeed the cultivation method of the divine nine-yang body, but I only have the first 3 levels. The first 3 levels? Lin Xian and the dark red dragon were stunned when they heard this. But the 3rd level was fine too. Lin Xian was not dissatisfied. Okay. The nine-yang sword saint's clone nodded. Then his body shone brightly, completely enveloping Lin Xian. It was as if a sun had exploded between heaven and earth, so bright that the dark red dragon could not open his eyes. The light disappeared as quickly as it came. Soon it was suppressed in Black Demon Cliff. Therefore the people outside Black Demon Cliff could not see or know what was happening here. Lin Xian was receiving the inheritance of the first 3 levels of the divine nine-yang body, while outside the sky was in chaos. The 2 battle kings of the battle tribe joined forces and rushed to the place where the Sky Axe Battle King had perished. They scouted their surroundings, but discovered that Lin Xian had long since disappeared. Not only that, but they had also searched the area within a radius of several 100,000 miles. They didn't discover anything either. In the end, there was only one place left, and that was Black Demon Cliff. Impossible. It was absolutely impossible for that kid to enter Black Demon Cliff. Silver Battle King shook his head. On the other side, Galactic Battle King added. Indeed, even invincible kings did not dare to enter the Black Demon Cliff. Even if that kid had eaten a bear's heart and leopard's guts, he would not have the guts to enter the Black Demon Cliff. Let's look in other places. The 2 battle kings quickly left and started searching in the distance. At the same time, the members of the Yin-Yang sect launched an all-encompassing pursuit. Apart from the Yin-Yang sect, the 5 Elemental Palace, the 9 Heaven Sacred Ground, the 10,000 Lightning Sacred Ground, the Tai Royal Dynasty, and the other sacred grounds and sects whose saints Lin Xian had killed had joined hands and started a massacre. However, they would not succeed in the end. Because now Lin Xian was inside Black Demon Cliff. However, no matter how much these people calculated, they would never have considered this point. The joint pursuit of Lin Xian by several great sage kings was just a small episode. The real shock was at the Yuhua Immortal Robe. More and more experts were making their moves. Damn it, all of you, get lost. This belongs to the ancient sage of the monster race. An invincible king from the monster imperial palace roared crazily. His body emitted a terrifying power and turned into a black tiger. It was indomitable and extremely terrifying. Belongs to the monster race? What a joke. It is clearly worn by the ancient sage of the human race. An invincible king from the Dian sacred ground snorted and slashed out with a giant sword in his hand. The Dian sword technique instantly flew out. Get lost. A roar shook the 9 heavens. The terrifying black tiger emitted a terrifying sound wave that affected everything within a radius of hundreds of thousands of miles. The martial artists who were watching the battle from afar instantly vomited blood and were sent flying. In this battlefield, not only were there invincible kings and elders, but there were also some peerless powerhouses watching from afar. This was because how could they miss such an exciting battle? They probably wouldn't see such a scene even once in thousands of years. These people wanted to see the peerless glory. However, they didn't expect that the strength of these people was beyond their imagination. Even though they had retreated so far, a roar still sent them flying. They were so frightened that they hurriedly retreated again, not daring to come forward again. A mere black tiger dares to be arrogant in front of me? The invincible king from the Dian sacred ground snorted coldly and waved his long sword again. The black tiger phantoms in the sky also roared and charged forward. In an instant the sky collapsed and the earth cracked. The two collided with each other, emitting a sonorous sound. Boom, boom. A huge black hole appeared and swallowed the world. With a scream, one of the black tiger's claws was cut off. It was as if a mountain had fallen from the sky. It directly smashed the ground, and a few cracks that were tens of thousands of meters long appeared. The invincible king from the monster imperial palace was furious. He rushed forward crazily. However, the invincible king from the Dian sacred ground was indeed powerful. He waved his long sword, and a terrifying sword chi swept out, instantly piercing through the black tiger again. The black tiger roared and dimmed as if it would disappear at any time. Seeing this, the invincible king from the monster imperial palace's expression changed drastically. He didn't dare to fight anymore and quickly retreated. Seeing his opponent retreat, the invincible king from the Dian sacred ground snorted coldly, and the aura on his body became even colder. However, in the next moment he spat out blood and flew backward. This was because in the sky, a blood-colored figure flew out, and a ray of light turned into a blood river that was tens of thousands of meters long and rushed directly toward him. The Dian sword formation instantly shattered, and the invincible king from the Dian sacred ground spat out blood and flew backward. Damn it, it's that blood-colored corpse. Seeing this, the invincible kings from the other sacred grounds also had gloomy expressions. That blood-colored corpse was too terrifying. Should be a saint too. However, these two saints were both corpses. They probably couldn't even use 1,000th of their strength. That was why they could fight against them now. If it was a living saint, even if all of them joined forces, they probably wouldn't be able to block a single move from the other party. Therefore, now that the two saints were weak, it was their best opportunity to attack. Everyone, let's attack together. Let's seal the corpses of these two saints first, and then we'll split the Yuhua immortal clothing stone. An invincible king from the Yi family stood out. His golden qi and blood surged into the sky like a god of war, shining in all directions. The invincible kings from the other sacred grounds and great sects also nodded. On the immortal palace's side, the 6 protectors also had solemn expressions. Indeed, compared to the battle between them, fighting against the 2 great sages' corpses was more important. Roar. Chapter 26:11. The eyes of the human saint wearing the Yuhua immortal robe emitted a piercing cold light. He turned into a sword chi and descended from the sky. Everyone go all out. Don't hold back anymore. Otherwise we will all die. The invincible king of the Yi family roared, and a saint's afterimage appeared above his head. The power of his bloodline was instantly activated, and a majestic power erupted. 6 paths of reincarnation fist. The invincible king of the Yi family attacked crazily, and his golden fist exploded the world. This was an extremely terrifying fist technique. It carried an indomitable aura as if it could split the world apart, and it resisted the blood-colored nether river. Tao gave birth to 1, 1 gave birth to 2, 2 gave birth to 3, and 3 gave birth to all things. The invincible king of the Tao-I Holy Land made his move. Resplendent light illuminated the sky, like a star in the darkness, bringing with it supreme light as it slashed forward. Seeing this divine ability, the invincible kings of the other holy lands also changed their expressions. One had to admit that the divine ability of the Tao-I Holy Land was too terrifying. However, they weren't bad either. These invincible kings all held the saints' fragments in their hands, and there was more than one of them. They were also wearing top heaven stage battle armor. There were even some who were wearing the saints' broken battle armor. In short, at this moment, the power they displayed, coupled with the saints' fragments, far exceeded that of the invincible kings. The terrifying aura of chaos, the terrifying power of the 5 elements, and the yin and yang energies circulated in the sky. Rays of resplendent light swept across the world. On the immortal palace's side, the 6 great protectors also made their move. Each of them displayed a great divine ability. Especially the great protector, he was even more mighty and extraordinary. A red spear seemed to be flowing with divine blood. With a stab of the spear, it shattered one void after another. Boom, boom. The sky collapsed and the earth cracked. Ghosts wailed and wolves howled. Large cracks appeared in the sky one after another, shocking the peerless warriors who were watching the battle from afar. Was this the attack of an invincible king? It was too terrifying. It was a pity that they couldn't see a real saint attack. The power that these corpses could display was too limited. Are you crazy? If a real saint attacked, would we still be alive? The others shook their heads. That was indeed the case. If a real saint attacked, no one would be able to escape. None of these invincible kings would be able to escape. However, being able to see such a shocking battle, their trip was already worth it. The blood-red corpse roared. He had gone mad and blood-red runes appeared on his body. Blood-colored divine chains of laws danced around him. A pair of blood-red wings even appeared on his back. They were tens of thousands of miles long, and with a gentle flap, the void shattered. At this moment, not only was he attacking these invincible kings, he was also attacking the saint's corpse. From the looks of it, he wanted to snatch the Yuhua immortal robe. The saint of the human race sat in the purple light screen, wearing the Yuhua immortal robe. Her beautiful face was expressionless. Light flashed from her beautiful eyes, blocking all the attacks. At the same time, divine chains of laws appeared beside him, bringing with them supreme power. Not good. Upon seeing these chains, the invincible kings' faces fell, and they pushed the power of their saint fragments to the limit to defend themselves. It couldn't be helped. Although the two sages were corpses, the law divine chains still contained the law of heaven and earth. It was simply impossible for them to contend against it by themselves. Sure enough, when the law divine chains of the two great sage corpses collided, the void within a radius of millions of miles was directly shattered. The sky was cut open and the earth was sinking. Not a single place was intact. Many of the peerless powerhouses who were watching the battle from afar were instantly killed. The rest of the people also ran away like they had gone mad. At this moment they no longer dared to approach. They retreated tens of millions of miles away, using secret techniques to watch the battle. But the blood-red demon overlord's corpse flapped its huge blood-red wings, blocking the attacks of all the invincible kings. With a roar, he charged towards the saint of the human race. The saint of the human race slowly raised his palm and gently pressed forward. An earth-shattering sound was heard, and those invincible kings also fled madly. Several invincible kings of the Gu family joined forces to use the Great Void technique to envelop these people. Only then did they escape this calamity. They were exiled in the void, looking back at the original space through a secret technique. They saw that the millions of miles of space they were in instantly shattered, turning into a huge black hole. It was too terrifying. Was this the attack of a saint? It was just a casual attack, but it had caused such a terrifying scene. An invincible king of the wavering light's sacred land snorted coldly. The dragon pattern cauldron above his head flickered. This dragon pattern cauldron was many times more powerful than the wavering light saint's dragon pattern cauldron. It could be said that it was an extremely terrifying restriction dharma artifact. It had already surpassed the heaven realm. He waved the dragon pattern cauldron and directly hit the void. The dragon pattern cauldron flew out and enlarged in the sky like a mountain, charging towards the blood-red demon overlord. The replica dragon pattern cauldron landed on the blood-red demon overlord's corpse, emitting countless rays of blood-red light. However, it did not cause any harm to the corpse. The blood-red demon overlord's corpse was enraged. His gaze turned into two divine spears that pierced through the void. Not good. The invincible kings of the Gu family changed their expressions and hurriedly moved away. However, they were still one step too late. With an earth-shattering sound, the Great Void technique was broken. All the invincible kings were exiled from the void and returned to their original world. Some of them even vomited blood. Two unlucky invincible kings were directly pierced through and nailed to death in the void, unable to come back to life. Seeing this scene, the invincible king's expressions were extremely ugly. It was too terrifying. They realized that even if they had the saint's fragment, they would not be able to defeat these people. Unless they used a real saint's weapon. A saint's weapon? In the sky, an invincible king surrounded by a black and white aura had a serious expression. In the next moment, a cold light appeared in his eyes. Boom. The void above his head cracked open, and a black and white ancient mirror appeared in the void. The ancient mirror was only the size of a palm, and it was engraved with runes. As soon as it appeared, it crushed the void. A terrifying saint's aura spread out from it and swept in all directions. At this moment, all the invincible kings trembled as they looked into the distance. The yin-yang mirror. It was an undamaged yin-yang mirror. Heavens, this is a saint weapon. Damn it, the yin-yang sect actually brought a saint weapon. Exclamations sounded. The invincible kings were extremely shocked. They did not expect the yin-yang sect to bring an undamaged saint weapon. An undamaged saint weapon and a saint weapon seemed similar, but there was a huge difference between them. Chapter 26:12. The power of a saint's fragment was probably less than 1,000th of an undamaged saint's weapon. If an invincible king had enough power and could revive a saint's weapon, he would definitely be able to defeat everyone. Other than a true saint, perhaps an undamaged saint's weapon would be able to fight against it. The others would not be able to do anything. As expected, as soon as the undamaged yin-yang mirror appeared, a terrifying aura exploded. In the distance, the two saints' corpses stopped fighting. They quickly retreated and looked ahead in bewilderment. At this moment, the two saints' corpses also had serious expressions. They did not expect that there would be an undamaged saint's weapon among these humans. Suddenly, the blood-colored beast overlord's corpse let out an excited roar. His blood was boiling. A huge hand that blotted out the sky and covered the earth came grabbing over. It seemed like he wanted to take the yin-yang mirror. Oh no, don't let him succeed. The invincible kings were shocked. If the yin-yang mirror was taken away, it would be troublesome. A saint's corpse and an undamaged saint's weapon. No one would be able to do anything about it. The invincible king born from yin-yang snorted. You want to take my yin-yang mirror? Go to hell for me. The black and white chi on it quickly turned into a black and white seal that pressed down from the sky. Boom, boom. The two collided and the sky collapsed. It was terrifying. The other invincible kings exclaimed. It blocked it. It blocked it. As expected, an invincible king with an undamaged saint's weapon could fight against a saint's corpse. The blood-colored beast overlord's corpse roared, and the human saint's corpse's eyes flickered. On the other side, the invincible king from the yin-yang sect was also not feeling well. His face was extremely pale. Obviously, using an undamaged saint's weapon had consumed too much of his energy. Unfortunately, he was not a true saint. No matter how strong an invincible king was, he could not fully unleash the power of a saint's weapon. If that attack had been launched by a saint, the beast overlord's corpse would have been defeated long ago. It was too difficult to become a saint in this era. However, it was not easy for a saint's weapon to appear. Even if it was difficult to defeat it, it would not be a problem to fight against it. Moreover, the yin-yang sect was not the only one who brought an undamaged saint's weapon. The other families and sacred grounds probably also have one. It's just that they had not used it yet. Many invincible kings were secretly communicating with each other. The invincible king of the yin-yang sect roared, "Come and help me." Another 3 invincible emperors of the yin-yang sect showed up. They infused their yin and yang qi into the yin-yang mirror above them. For such a terrifying saint weapon, the power of one invincible king was not enough. Only with 4 invincible kings working together would they be able to provide enough energy. Of course, this was only temporary. If the battle went on for too long, even 4 invincible kings wouldn't be enough. The invincible kings of the Yi family exchanged glances and joined hands to produce a bronze cauldron. As soon as the bronze cauldron appeared, its terrifying aura made many invincible kings almost kneel on the ground. Could this be the celestial the arch cauldron? Everyone was shocked and the others also began to scream. The celestial Thearcha's cauldron was no joke. That was an extreme weapon. Everyone's eyelids twitched. The Yi clan had produced a great emperor who was known as Emperor Yi. The weapon he used back then was a bronze cauldron, which was also an extreme weapon. It was passed down in the Yi clan. Therefore, the Yi clan became one of the most terrifying clans in the world. With an extreme weapon, no one dared to attack them. Impossible, it definitely wasn't an extreme weapon. These invincible kings couldn't unleash the power of an extreme weapon at all. It was useless even if they had it. This should be a replica of an extreme weapon. Indeed, any clan or sacred ground that had an extreme weapon would create many replicas. Looking at the power of this replica, it was at least at the level of a saint weapon. Although it wasn't a true extreme weapon, it was still extremely terrifying among the saint weapons. Everyone was discussing. As expected, the bronze cauldron emitted a terrifying aura as it floated up and down. It even carried a desolate force. Buzz, a sharp aura emerged and tore apart the firmament. In the sky, a golden sword shone brightly with the shadow of a golden dragon on it. The Great Xia dynasty had made their move. Everyone was shocked. They didn't expect the Great Xia dynasty to also bring a saint weapon, the golden sword. Let's do it too. In the immortal palace, the great guardian took a deep breath. The 5 great guardians behind him also nodded solemnly. In the next moment, the majestic power on their bodies formed a terrifying seal above their heads. Tens of thousands of auras hung down. What was this? It was so terrifying. Heaven, it was another saint's weapon, a perfectly intact saint's weapon. The invincible kings exclaimed. Not every sacred ground had brought a saint's weapon that was in perfect condition. Therefore, at this moment, they all turned their heads to look when they sensed the new saint weapon. It's them. It's the group from the immortal palace. They didn't expect their foundation to be so deep that they actually had an intact saint weapon. What was this saint weapon? They had never seen it before. Was it a huge seal? Could it be the legendary sky-flipping seal? It wasn't the sky-flipping seal. It should be something they hadn't seen before. The immortal palace was too mysterious. In an instant, countless invincible kings were discussing. Even the Yin-Yang sect, Yi family, Gu family, and the great Xia dynasty turned their heads to look. Boom. The people from the Wavering Light Sacred Ground also made their move. They took out a black war chariot that was extraordinary. It was also a saint weapon. Then, the invincible king of the Jade Lake Sacred Ground also took out a glass armor and put it on. It was an intact saint armor. Seeing this scene, everyone exclaimed and envied. Wearing this armor would definitely be able to withstand the attack of the saint corpse. It could be said that they were already in an invincible position. Many sacred grounds and great sects took out intact saint weapons. Those invincible kings who didn't bring undamaged saint weapons were filled with regret, so much so that their intestines turned green. Damn it, if they had known this would happen they would have brought it too. But now regret was useless. They hurriedly activated the spatial array and directly sent a message. They told the powerhouses of their sacred grounds to hurry over with intact saint weapons. Perhaps they could turn the situation around. Any later and they might not have the chance. The Immortal Palace, Yi family, Gu family, Great Xia dynasty, Wavering Light Sacred Ground, and Wavering Light Sacred Ground all made their moves. In an instant the sky fell and the earth cracked. The two great sage corpses also roared, and the order laws on their bodies danced in the sky. They fought against it. The battle erupted and it was very intense. Chapter 26:13. Although they were invincible kings, they were the pinnacle of existence in the era of saints. But now they weren't enough at all. That casual strike could probably kill them all. This battle was truly too terrifying. Everything within a radius of tens of millions of miles was shattered, and the aftershocks of the energy continued to spread. Fortunately, the place where they came from was still a barren land. Otherwise, even the 9 grand dynasties would not be able to withstand such destruction. Several great sage lands and sects carried undamaged saint weapons to fight against the 2 great sage corpses. However, these 2 great sage corpses were too strange. Although they were corpses, they seemed to be able to revive bit by bit. Therefore, their strength was getting stronger and stronger. Now, even with so many saint weapons, they were still unable to suppress the 2. This shocked all the invincible kings. If they delayed any longer, they would probably be suppressed by the other party. No. These people frantically absorbed the spiritual chi between heaven and earth, swallowed heavenly treasures, and poured their energy into the saint weapons. Streaks of energy exploded, and a bright light shot into the sky, wanting to destroy the entire world. It was too terrifying. The invincible kings in the distance trembled, and the peerless almighties directly knelt on the ground, trembling, and could not stand up at all. But at this moment, the sky cracked open, and another saint weapon rushed over, directly shattering the world. A saint weapon. And it was a saint weapon brought by the spark stone. Heavens, which sacred ground was this? Buddhism, the sacred ground of Buddhism in the western desert. After seeing the light in the figure, everyone was shocked. It was an old monk wearing a kasaya with an old face. He held a purple demon subduing pestle in his hand, exuding a supreme divine power. Boom. A river of stars descended from the sky, covering the entire sky as if to replace this world. Taishan's sacred ground. They did not expect Taishan's sacred ground to come as well. Another wave of exclamations sounded. They found that more and more invincible kings were participating with saint weapons. There were already 8 or 9 of them. Ah! They did not expect such an exciting battle to be here. And so many saint weapons. Then I won't hold back. At this moment, a cold voice rang out, resounding through the world. All the invincible kings felt their scalps go numb. Who was it that dared to covet a saint's weapon? Everyone was about to go crazy. There was actually someone who didn't know the meaning of death and dared to have designs on a saint's weapon? Who was this? Did he not want to live anymore? Those invincible kings were extremely shocked. One had to know that they were all eyeing the Yuhua immortal robe. No one dared to eye the saint weapon. First of all, each of these factions had sage weapons. Second of all, these sage weapons were precious treasures of the great sage. If they were lost, those holy lands would definitely go crazy and hunt them down. Besides, do you think it's so easy to rob a saint's weapon? If he wasn't careful, he might be killed instead. Therefore, these invincible kings felt their scalps go numb when they heard these words. Those with saint weapons even snorted coldly. Who is it? Come out. The invincible kings of the Yin-Yang sacred land looked in all directions. The Yin-Yang chi transformed into 2 Yin-Yang blades that tore through space and time. An earth-shattering sound rang out, and the symbol laws that filled the sky scattered in all directions. A fist of light collided with the yin-yang twin blades. Then the two disappeared from the world at the same time. What? He blocked it? He actually blocked it? He blocked a saint weapon with a single punch? Heavens, who is this? Could it be that a real saint has appeared? Everyone was stunned. The other invincible kings with saint weapons looked even more solemn. The invincible kings of the yin-yang sect also narrowed their eyes, and their expressions became extremely ugly. Someone could actually block their saint weapons with their bare hands. Who exactly was it? A shocking aura tore through the void and then a figure walked out. It was an old man with white hair. His Taoist robe fluttered, and his eyes carried a trace of the power of laws. Damn it, a saint. He really is a saint. Many people were terrified. However, some people frowned. No, this aura doesn't seem right. If he's a real saint, he can probably kill us with a single glance. His aura seems to be even weaker than the saint's corpse. Could it be that he's a half-step saint? Some people guessed, and others also came to a realization. A half-step saint was a powerhouse who had surpassed the invincible kings but had not completely entered the saint realm. It could be said that he had already taken a step in. It was only a matter of time before he became a saint. They didn't expect that a half-step saint would appear at this time. Which sacred ground's half-step saint was this? Everyone looked at each other in dismay. They realized that they didn't know him. Heavens, could it be a wandering half-step saint? If that was the case, they would be in trouble. The other party would probably have no scruples. What if he really snatched a saint weapon and went into seclusion? He would wait for 1,000 years and become a saint before coming out. Perhaps even the sacred ground's major sects would have a headache. Therefore, the other party really had the qualifications and possibility to snatch a saint weapon. So, he's just a half-step saint. A mere half-step saint dares to have designs on our saint weapon? Aren't you thinking too highly of yourself? In Immortal Palace, the Great Protector held a blood-red spear and looked forward disdainfully. A Jianghu seal was floating above their heads. How dare you look down on me? The half-step saint snorted coldly. If you don't have a saint weapon, you can't even withstand a glance from me. What right do you have to look down on me? The half-step saint's aura was extremely powerful. Immortal Palace's Great Protector snorted coldly. There aren't so many ifs in this world. Even if I have a saint weapon, what can you do to me? At this point, the 6 Great Protectors attacked together. Above their heads, the Jianghu seal emitted an incomparable light. Then, it directly pressed down. It was as if a sun had descended from the sky, releasing tens of thousands of rays of light, completely enveloping the half-step saint. Get lost. The half-step saint roared angrily, and his palm blasted out like a giant dragon. However, this time he was forced back and his entire arm was numb. The Jianghu seal emitted countless runes enveloping the world. You're just SOSO, yet you still want to snatch a saint weapon. You're really courting death. The Great Protector's voice was cold. The other invincible kings were extremely shocked. This Immortal Palace was too powerful. It could actually force a half-step saint to retreat. The invincible kings of the Yi family, Gu family, and Great Xia dynasty all snorted coldly. Waves of murderous aura spread out. Damn it! The half-step saint roared angrily and quickly retreated. He could still fight against one saint weapon, but he couldn't fight against so many saint weapons. However, it was impossible for these people to hurt him. Chapter 26:14. As long as he could snatch a sacred weapon, he would immediately escape. He would not appear again until he reached the Sage Realm. Once he reached the Sage Realm and had a sacred weapon, no one in the world would be his match. Even those sacred grounds and great sects would not be able to do anything to him. After all, it was too difficult to kill a sage. Damn it, if this guy was not eliminated, he would always be a threat. The Great Guardian's face was gloomy. He activated the Heaven and Earth seal, and thousands of rays of light descended, completely enveloping them. Not only him, but the Yi family, Gu family, and the Great Xia dynasty also activated their sacred weapons and enveloped them. This was to prevent a sneak attack from a half-saint. If there was one who was least worried, it would be the invincible king from the Jade Lake sacred ground. She was wearing armor, and the other party would not even be able to break through her defense. For a moment, everyone was on guard against the sneak attack of a half-saint. At the same time, they once again charged towards the 2 corpses of the great sage. The sky fell and the earth cracked. It was very tragic. The battle had lasted for 3 days and 3 nights, and everyone did not have much energy left. After all, activating the sacred weapon consumed too much energy, and the corpses of the two sages were getting stronger and stronger. Fortunately, the two corpses were also fighting each other. Otherwise, if the two of them joined forces, the invincible kings would probably be in trouble. Whoosh. At this moment, the half-saint hiding in the dark made his move. He held a killing sword in his hand, and his entire person was like a god of death as he charged towards the great guardian and the others. With a swing of the sword, heaven and earth were split open, and even the laws of the sages appeared. Not good. The other great guardians of the immortal palace felt their scalps go numb when they felt this energy. The great guardian also suddenly turned his head and roared angrily. However, this time the half-saint came prepared. After fighting for so long, the 6 great guardians did not have much energy left. Therefore they did not dodge this attack. A terrifying murderous aura slashed on the light barrier, and an earth-shattering sound was heard. It did not break, but the 6 great guardians were sent flying. Ah! The half-saint laughed. Today I will show you my power. Runes flashed on his body. Although they were not complete, the fragments of the laws were far from what an invincible king could resist. As long as he could push them out of the range of the seal of heaven and earth, he would be able to kill them and seize the seal of heaven and earth. The other holy lands and great sects didn't help, because the 2 great sage corpses had shown their prowess, and they didn't have the time to help others. The invincible emperors in the distance were startled seeing this. It was over. This immortal palace was likely going to be in danger. It would be best if he was killed and even lost his saint weapon. That makes me even more satisfied. In the distance, the invincible kings of the myriad thunder holy lands sneered. Their holy child was killed by the immortal palace's master. At this moment, they naturally hoped that the 6 protectors of immortal palace would be killed. Only then would they be able to resolve the hatred in their hearts. Only then would they feel better. Although the others didn't have such a reason, they also thought that the 6 of them were doomed. After all, Half-Life had successfully launched a sneak attack, and the 6 great guardians' power had already been exhausted, so they wouldn't be able to resist him. The half-step saint's aura suddenly surged. The blood sword in his hand seemed to have turned into a heavenly sword as he continued to attack. The sky collapsed and the earth cracked and the ground shook rapidly. The heaven and earth seal above even buzzed. Damn it, counterattack. The great guardian roared and his body shone brightly. He attacked together with the other 5 protectors. Buzz. They controlled the heaven and earth seal and attacked. Their auras turned into peerless sword lights that swept across the sky. Seeing this scene, the half-step saint dodged. He wouldn't fight against the saint weapon. All he did was launch sneak attacks and interfere. He knew that the protector's power had been exhausted. Stop struggling. You are already at the end of your rope. I think it will be very difficult for you to continue controlling the saint weapon. Hand over the saint weapon obediently, and I can spare your lives. Otherwise all 6 of you will be killed. You want our saint weapon? You must be dreaming. Do you really think that you can fight against us? The 6 protectors once again took out natural treasures and stuffed them into their mouths. They quickly swallowed them to recover their exhausted power. However, the half-step saint sneered. The power of the saint weapon is definitely beyond your imagination. Its exhaustion isn't something that invincible kings like you can bear. So stop wasting time. No matter how many natural treasures you swallow, it won't be enough. The half-step sage's palms kept forming hand seals as fragments of nomological laws revolved around him. He also activated a secret technique, causing his power to increase explosively again. Seeing this, the 6 protectors' faces turned gloomy. Damn it. Now the other sacred grounds were surrounded by the 2 corpses, and it was difficult for them to help them. And this half-step saint in front of them dared to target them? He was courting death. If he was in his peak condition, he felt that he could kill the other party to the point where there was nowhere to go. But now, just as the other party had said, they had been fighting for 3 days and 3 nights, constantly controlling the saint weapon. They had exhausted a lot of their energy. This temporary increase couldn't make up for anything. However, it was impossible for the other party to snatch their heaven and earth seal like this. At most, they would lose some of their source energy to kill the other party. A crazy light appeared in the eyes of the 6 protectors. The strength of the half-step saint opposite them had also increased to a terrifying level. In fact, he wasn't much weaker than the 2 saint corpses. Obviously, the other party had activated a secret technique, and it must have cost him a lot. Damn it, go to hell for me. The half-step saint waved his blood-red sword and attacked again. He successfully suppressed the 6 protectors. He reached out his palm and completely enveloped the heaven and earth seal. The heaven and earth seal lowered its chi to resist. Stop struggling. Following me is better than following an invincible king. When I become a true saint, I will make my name known throughout the world." The half-step saint quickly said to the saint weapon. These saint weapons all had spirituality. If he could successfully persuade them, then he would be able to take them away effortlessly. However, he was obviously overthinking it. Why would this saint weapon listen to him? The heaven and earth seal trembled violently and began to resist. The half-step saint's face darkened. "Since you don't know what's good for you, then I can only shatter your soul seal and brand my own." A crazy light appeared in the half-step saint's eyes, and he was about to attack and use a secret technique. Bang! However, at this moment he screamed and flew backward. More than half of his body directly shattered and turned into a bloody mist. Seeing this scene, the half-step saint screamed and tore the void apart, escaping hundreds of thousands of miles away before stopping. He looked around in surprise. The other invincible kings also exclaimed in surprise. Damn it, what happened? A half-step saint's body was shattered and he was almost killed? Who did it? Chapter 26:15. In the distance, the invincible kings who were fighting with the two corpses of the great sage were also extremely shocked. They all separated a wisp of their soul to observe. In the next moment, everyone gasped in shock. It turned out that a palm had reached over from an extremely far distance. Wherever it passed, the world darkened, and the entire sky was completely covered. Hundreds of thousands of miles, millions of miles, and even tens of millions of miles were completely covered by this palm. Heavens, who is this? It's so terrifying. The half-step saint's body shone brightly, and his shattered body quickly healed. He gritted his teeth and looked at the sky. He looked at the huge hand that covered the sky. Then he asked coldly, "Damn it, who is it? Come out." He was too shocked that the other party could severely injure him in an instant. At first he thought that it was done by a saint weapon, but now it seemed that it was not. Damn it, could it be that a saint had made a move? He was extremely shocked. The others also thought of this possibility and held their breaths. The huge hand that covered the sky did not say anything, but it emitted an extremely terrifying energy. In his palm, strands of law divine chains flew out, turned into a divine rainbow, and flew toward the half-step saint below. Divine chains of law, complete divine chains of law. Oh no, it's a saint. When the half-step saint saw this scene, he was scared out of his wits and turned to flee. Although he was powerful and did not take the invincible kings seriously. However, at the same time, a real saint did not take him seriously. In front of a saint, he had no power to resist at all. However, the speed of the divine chains of law was too fast, and they arrived in front of him in an instant. Damn it! Block it for me. The half-step saint waved his blood-colored longsword, bringing with it a terrifying law fragment to resist. With a bang, his blood-colored longsword was directly broken in half, and the law fragments that he had shot out also disappeared. With a puff, he was pierced by the divine chains of law and blood spurted out. The half-step saint screamed in the sky. Blood splattered in the sky, piercing through the void, directly piercing through the mountains and rivers below, and terrifying black holes appeared one after another. It could not be helped. This was the blood of a half-step saint, which surpassed that of an invincible king. In fact, the blood even contained terrifying law fragments. It was extremely terrifying. The undefeatable emperors immediately fled into the distance upon seeing this, fearing that they would be penetrated by the blood. Above him, the half-step saint's divine chains pierced through him and nailed him to the ground. His broken bones and shattered body were restored once again. But just as it recovered, it was crushed by the law divine chains. It was extremely miserable. From the looks of it, he was already in a state worse than death. "Who are you? Who are you?" The half-step saint screamed madly in the air. Although he wouldn't die immediately, he couldn't bear the pain and humiliation. After all, he was a half-saint. With a raise of his hand, he could kill an invincible king. Initially, Zhang Xian had thought that he would be able to suppress everyone and snatch a saint artifact before living a carefree life. However, who would have thought that not long after he appeared, he would be severely injured by a single slap. Now he was even pierced by the law divine chains. However, no matter how much he roared, no one answered him. The terrifying hand in the sky was incomparably cold. 2 more divine chains of laws descended and drilled into the half-step sage's cave. There was even one that directly pierced through his head, causing his soul to be severely injured. This scene made the half-step saint scream. He hurriedly knelt on the ground and begged for mercy. "Please spare me. I won't dare to have any ideas about the saint artifact anymore. If you let me go, I will leave now. I will never appear in front of you again in this life. He was really scared. He was really scared. From the looks of it, the other party wanted to kill him. The other invincible kings were also dumbfounded. There was dead silence. What did they see? A half-step saint was still flaunting his might and suppressing everyone. But now, in the blink of an eye, he was kneeling on the ground and begging for mercy. The owner of this sky-covering hand was too terrifying. He was definitely a true saint. However, which sacred ground saint was he from? They didn't know. Could it be a saint from Immortal Palace? As soon as this thought came out, their eyelids twitched wildly. In Immortal Palace, the 6 protectors stabilized their bodies and quickly swallowed heaven and earth treasures to recover. At the same time, they looked up and were extremely excited. The 6 of them looked at each other, their faces full of joy. However, they didn't shout, nor did they say anything. They wouldn't casually expose themselves in front of these sacred ground sections. But the half-step saint begged for mercy in mid-air, looking extremely miserable. However, the sky-covering hand didn't let him go. With a wave of its palm, another 2 divine chains of order pierced through. 5 divine chains of order completely pierced through the half-step saint. The laws on them erupted, enveloping everything. With a bang, the half-step saint's body was torn into pieces. A miserable scream rang out, and a soul fled into the distance. However, it was immediately killed by the divine chains of law. That a dignified half-step saint died just like that. Not even a trace of his soul escaped. This scene made all the invincible kings' bodies go cold. They all trembled and couldn't help but want to kneel down. The reason for that was because that sort of ability was simply too frightening and too sharp. One had to know that that was a half-step saint. He already had 1 foot in the saint realm. It was only a matter of time before he could become a true saint. But now he was killed just like that. It was as easy as killing an ant. Was this the power of a saint? These people sucked in a breath of cold air as their scalps went numb. They looked at the corpses of the 2 saints in the distance and secretly rejoiced. Fortunately, the corpses of these 2 saints couldn't exert even 1/10,000th of their power. Otherwise, if it was a living saint, he would probably be able to kill all of them with a single slap. In the sky, the terrifying sky-covering hand didn't disappear after killing the half-step saint. Instead, it lowered even more divine chains of law and swept towards the 2 saint corpses. What? His target was actually also the saint corpses. No, from the looks of it, his target should be the Yuhua immortal robe. Heavens, has a saint finally made a move? Those invincible kings screamed. The Yuhua immortal robe was incomparably mysterious. It was even rumored that it had the mysterious power of resurrection, making everyone jealous. But this time, the invincible kings of the sacred ground all appeared with saint fragments or saint weapons. In fact, those sacred lords and sect leaders hadn't even made a move yet. But they didn't expect that a saint would actually make a move. It was over, they couldn't resist at all. Retreat. Sure enough, the invincible kings of the Yi family, Gu family, and Great Xia dynasty roared and retreated one after another. There was nothing they could do. Even if they had undamaged saint weapons in their hands, they couldn't withstand it at all. Didn't they see that a living half-step saint was easily killed in an instant? If they dared to stay for even a moment, they would probably be pierced through by the divine chains of law very soon. Chapter 26:16. In an instant, only the corpses of the 2 sages were left within a radius of 1,000,000 miles. The 2 sages' corpses stopped attacking each other. Instead, they looked at the giant hand in the sky. They felt a threat to their lives. The other party's aura was the same as theirs. They were both sages. Moreover, it was a living sage. It was much stronger than the 2 of them. Whoosh, whoosh. The 2 sages' corpses had no intention of attacking at all. They tore through the void and fled into the distance. The 2 of them did not have the strength to fight against a living sage for the time being. Unless they absorbed enough power or were completely revived, they would not be able to fight against it. Bus, bus, bus. The giant hand covered the sky, covering the sky. Thousands of divine chains of natural laws hung down, dancing rapidly, directly piercing through the void. They swept toward the 2 corpses. They wanted to escape? How was that possible? The means of a sage were not something these invincible kings could imagine. Seeing this scene, the invincible kings retreated tens of millions of miles away. However, they did not stay idle. They hurriedly reported back to their sacred grounds and families. It seemed that they had no choice but to ask for help from an even more terrifying existence. Boom, boom, boom. The 2 sages' corpses were wrapped by countless law divine chains and kept colliding. For a moment they were in a stalemate in midair. The terrifying energy surged. It was extremely terrifying. However, not long after, the sky split open again and a figure appeared. Endless black and white chi rolled and turned into two black and white dragons. They circled in the sky and quickly descended. Standing on top of the black and white dragon, there was a figure looking down. He had a sharp and monstrous aura. Sect leader, the sect leader is here. The invincible kings of the Yin-Yang sect were overjoyed and exclaimed. The other invincible kings looked at the sky and felt their scalps go numb. Could this figure be the sect leader of the Yin-Yang sect? They did not expect the sect leader of the Yin-Yang sect to come personally. Crack, crack. Another crack appeared in the void. 9 dragons were incomparably huge. They crushed the void and pulled a war chariot. An old man stood on the war chariot as if he was the divine king. The sacred leader of the Tao-E sacred ground had also come. The group of people exclaimed. A beam of sword light streaked across the sky, covering thousands of miles. Sword chi filled the sky as a figure descended from the sky with a divine sword in his hand. It was the sacred leader of the Dayan sacred ground. Boom. A humongous object broke through the void and flew over. It looked similar to a dragon with a pair of wings on its back that were covered in scales. It also had 8 arms. His eyes were filled with a biting cold aura. This was the palace lord of the demon sovereign palace. At this moment he directly transformed into his true form and landed in the air. When those invincible kings saw this scene, their scalps went numb. It was rumored that the palace master of the Demon King Palace possessed the bloodline of the 8-clawed tyrant dragon. Looking at it now, it was indeed true. It was even possible that he was the descendant of the 8-clawed tyrant dragon. Figures arrived one after another. Many patriarchs and sacred leaders of major sects and sacred grounds had arrived. The eyes of the invincible emperors were filled with excitement. However, when the sect masters and sacred leaders arrived, their expressions changed immediately. This was because they saw the gigantic hand in the sky, and they felt their souls tremble. In particular, the divine chains of laws that filled the sky made their scalps go numb. Damn it, a true saint has appeared. These sect leaders were shocked. Although they were sect leaders, it didn't mean that they were saints. There were indeed saints in the great sage lands and major sections. However, they usually stayed in seclusion as their trump card and foundation. They wouldn't easily make a move. However, they didn't expect that a saint would actually make a move. Damn it, which sacred ground is he from? These sect masters and sacred leaders acted as if they were facing a great enemy. They shouted coldly and took out their undamaged sacred weapons, which emitted millions of rays of light. Their strength was much stronger than those invincible kings. Therefore, at this moment, the power of the sacred weapons in their hands was truly overwhelming. However, no matter how strong they were, they couldn't resist the divine chains of laws that filled the sky. The gigantic hand in the sky was floating up and down. In fact, the other party didn't even reveal his true form. Just a palm was enough to make those sect masters and sacred leaders act as if they were facing a great enemy. In fact, they couldn't even resist. In the end, the expressions of these sect masters and sacred leaders changed drastically. They gritted their teeth and roared angrily. Run. In the next moment, they tore through the void and led the people of their respective sacred grounds and sects away quickly. There was no other way. They couldn't resist at all. Moreover, they could tell that the other party didn't use his full strength. Otherwise, they would have been killed by now. What a terrifying saint. It seemed that they really had to ask the saints of their sacred grounds to come out of seclusion and make a move. The saints of the various great sage lands would usually go into seclusion to cultivate quietly and break through. Therefore, unless it was absolutely necessary, no one would disturb them. But now, for the sake of the Yuhua immortal robe, these sect masters and sacred leaders decided to inform the saints of their respective sacred grounds. After all, the legend of the Yuhua immortal robe was too shocking. Everyone retreated, leaving only the corpses of the 2 saints in the sky. They still wanted to resist tenaciously, but at this moment, the gigantic hand that covered the sky erupted with an incomparable light. Mysterious runes appeared on it one after another, accompanied by the gigantic hand that covered the sky, enveloping them. In an instant, the 2 corpses of the saints were enveloped. In the next moment, the void shattered, billions of galaxies churned, and a huge black hole appeared. When the phenomenon of heaven and earth disappeared again, the sky regained its clarity. The 2 corpses disappeared and the laws that filled the sky disappeared. The incomparably terrifying palm of the saints also disappeared, as if nothing had ever appeared. Everything had disappeared. Everything had disappeared. Those invincible kings looked at this scene in horror. They had been killing the corpses of the two saints for nearly 2 years, but they couldn't do anything to the other party. In the end, in a short moment, they were sealed by a slap. This gap made them despair. The expressions of the sect masters and sacred leaders of the various great sage lands also changed drastically. They didn't expect that they hadn't informed their saints to come out of seclusion yet. The other party had already taken away the two saints' corpses. This made it impossible for them to continue their search. Sure enough, a day later, the Yi family saint broke out of seclusion and walked between heaven and earth. At this moment, tens of thousands of divine chains of laws danced in the air, and a terrifying saint's might swept across heaven and earth, causing everyone to tremble. As expected of the clan of the ancients, it was simply too terrifying. The entire world trembled. At this moment, everyone stayed dormant, not daring to have any thoughts of resistance. The Yi family saint came out of the eastern wilderness and traveled all over the middle continent, the western desert, the southern border, and the northern plains. However, he could no longer find any trace of the Yuhua immortal robe. This made him extremely disappointed. Who exactly took away the Yuhua immortal robe? He came to the place where the gigantic hand that covered the sky finally appeared and investigated the remaining aura. However, he found nothing. In the end, he could only return in disappointment. This time, the world was in an uproar. Chapter 26:17. Everyone knew that a saint had taken action and taken away the Yuhua immortal robe. After that, the Yi family saint came out to search for the 5 continents, but to no avail. This made many people wonder which saint it was to have such a powerful method. So fierce, not a single clue was left behind. Not long after, another saint was born. This was the saint of the Great Xia dynasty. He was already very old because this was not only a saint but also a living fossil. He was already very old, and it was even rumored that his end was near. However, for the Yuhua immortal robe for the last hope. He came out of seclusion. He also used all kinds of methods, but similarly he found nothing. This made the people of the world even more shocked. The two great sages people repeatedly attacked, but they could not detect the other party's traces and aura. It was too unbelievable. Who was the other party? The outside world was in chaos, but here at Black Demon Cliff, it was quiet. The dark red divine dragon waited outside Black Demon Cliff. As for Lin Xian, his entire body was wrapped in countless rays of light. He felt that he had entered a strange space. In front of him, there was a light figure quietly looking at him. It was the remnant soul imprint of the 9 Sun Sword Saint. As for Lin Xian, he was sitting there cross-legged with a solemn expression. Because at this moment, a wave of information was transmitted into his mind. This information was so huge that it gave Lin Xian a fright. Fortunately, his soul force was comparable to an invincible king. Otherwise, the impact of this information alone would be able to injure his soul. It seemed that the 9 Yang divine body was indeed terrifying. Just this information alone was not something that anyone could bear. Feeling the vast amount of information in his mind, Lin Xian was also extremely surprised. The 9 Yang divine body was too powerful and too mysterious. He had also cultivated a lot of heaven-tier cultivation techniques, and there were even high-tier ones. However, none of them had such a vast amount of information like this. What kind of divine ability was the 9 Yang divine body? Lin Xian did not know, but thinking about it, it must be very terrifying. Very terrifying. Because this vast amount of information was only the first 3 levels. Only the heavens knew how terrifying the cultivation technique information of the complete 9 Yang divine body would be. After an unknown amount of time, the message gradually weakened and finally stopped. Lin Xian continued to sit there with his legs crossed. His eyes were closed, but the soul in his mind was spinning at an extremely fast speed, absorbing the additional information that was coming to him. He is shocked in his heart because he discovered that the 9 Yang divine body is too powerful, too terrifying. If he could successfully cultivate it, his physique would become incomparably strong. Perhaps it could be compared with the Yi family's sacred body. In the end, Lin Xian couldn't help but start cultivating because he really wanted to give it a try. However, the 9 Yang divine body is extremely difficult to cultivate. Lin Xian can only cultivate the first step of the first level. That was to first strengthen his bones, meridians, and qi and blood according to the circulation route of the spiritual power in the book. Only when one's strength reached a certain level could they begin the second step. The circulation route of the 9 Yang divine body is too complicated and profound. It is extremely complicated. Even some of the undeveloped meridians of the human body have to be moved. One must know that the human body is very mysterious. There are even ancient sages who said that the secrets of the human body are more mysterious than the universe. Lin Xian followed the circulation route and circulated it. He carefully observed the circulation route map and seemed to form a vast starry sky map in his body. It was as if a universe was slowly forming. Boom boom boom. After the first circulation was formed, Lin Xian felt that his body seemed to be different. The art of longevity activated and mobilized all the spiritual power in his body to circulate automatically. At this moment, Lin Xian's body emitted a ray of light. There was a mysterious force circulating. The aura on his body also became stronger. This is too magical. Boom boom boom. However, the show has just begun. After one circulation, Lin Xian immediately felt that something was wrong. The meridians and qi and blood in his body seemed to be burning. A huge wave of heat enveloped him. Lin Xian frowned. His current strength is comparable to that of a late-stage 8-star. Ordinary flames can't cause any harm to him. In fact, he can even withstand the heavenly flames of heaven and earth. But now he felt like he was being burned by a raging fire. That pain, even for him, made him grimace in pain. In an instant, countless wisps of white smoke rose from his body and turned into clouds floating in the sky. His body was also incomparably red and scalding hot. There were even strange flames circulating on the surface of his body. Pain, it's really painful. This pain made Lin Xian extremely shocked. He also had the hellfire in his hand, but he found that the flame in his body was even more powerful than the hellfire. They couldn't be compared at all. What's going on? How can this be? Lin Xian was shocked and suddenly opened his eyes. Opposite him, the 9 Sun Sword Saints Afterimage said indifferently. The 9 Sun Divine Body is the most masculine body in the world, and it has to withstand endless tempering. Burning with fire is only the first step. What? Could it be that you can't even bear this little bit of pain? It turns out that this is the pain that has to be experienced to cultivate the divine body. Hearing this, Lin Xian was relieved. He thought that he had made a mistake in his cultivation. But now it seemed like that wasn't the case. It was because he had succeeded that such a flame appeared. In the next moment he gritted his teeth and said, "It's just a flame. You want me to retreat? Impossible." With a roar, Lin Xian activated the 9 Sun Divine Body circulation route even more crazily. "Come on, I'm not afraid of you." Lin Xian gritted his teeth, closed his eyes again and formed a seal with his hands. In front of him, the 9 Sun Sword Saints Afterimage looked at this scene with flickering eyes. More than one person had cultivated the 9 Sun Divine Body, but in the end, very few people had succeeded. That was because it was too difficult to cultivate. Everyone knew that the 9 Sun Divine Body was not inferior to the sacred body, but no one knew how difficult it was. A long sigh sounded. Indeed, the Yi family's sacred body was strong because the Yi family had a great emperor. As for the sacred body, it was formed by the essence of the great emperor's bloodline, and it was rare for one to appear in millions of years. It could be said that it was the favored child of the heavens. The 9 Sun Divine Body was different. It did not need the power of the bloodline, and it did not need a great emperor's ancestor. But in the end, how could it compete with the bloodline of a great emperor? It must be done with countless hardships. So now Lin Xian was enduring this pain. The pain of the burning flame burned for 49 days, but Lin Xian gritted his teeth and resisted it. When the flame disappeared, Lin Xian opened his eyes with a pale face. He did not have a trace of strength in his body and he could not stand up. Chapter 26:18. This was not an attack on him. If it were any other flame, he would have used the great dragon sword soul to extinguish it. But this was different. This was cultivation. Lin Xian could only bear it alone without extinguishing it. With a flip of his palm, Lin Xian took out a jade gourd. He swallowed a few drops of spirit liquid and the spiritual energy in his body quickly recovered. His face also became rosy. This was not the end. Lin Xian poured some earth spirit liquid and smeared it all over his body. He let his muscles and bones absorb it. Now that he had obtained the cultivation method for the first 3 levels, he naturally knew how to cultivate and nurture the 9 Yang Divine Body. It was not easy to cultivate the 9 Yang Divine Body. It was even more difficult to cultivate it. In addition to enduring the burning of the fire, it also required all kinds of precious treasures to temper the body and develop its potential. Originally, Lin Xian thought that the treasures in his hands were enough. But now it seemed that it was far from enough. The energy needed to cultivate the 9 Yang Divine Body was too huge. It was not less than the energy needed to revive the great dragon sword soul. After his body recovered, Lin Xian gritted his teeth and decided to try again. Thus, it was another 49 days of burning. Lin Xian felt that his soul was about to be ignited. This hellish ordeal disappeared without a trace on the 49th day. Lin Xian lay on the ground. He did not want to say a word. He could not even move his fingers. His soul controlled the jade gourd and poured out the earth spirit liquid. He dripped it on his body and poured it into his mouth. Soon his strength was restored. Lin Xian looked at the broken light in front of him. He knelt on the ground and kowtowed 3 times. Thank you, Senior, for teaching me. I, Lin Xian, only had one master. But from now on, I will treat you as my most respected master. Lin Xian was very grateful to the broken light in front of him. One had to know that the 9-yang divine body was one of the strongest physiques in the world. It was definitely a great fortune for him to be able to obtain it. Lin Xian was not an ungrateful person. Good. I never thought that I, the 9-sun sword sage, would finally have a successor after millions of years. The glowing figure also laughed heartily, his eyes filled with joy. It was obvious that he was very satisfied with Lin Xian. Because not only was his talent high, his willpower was also very shocking. It could be said to be the best of the best. Out of millions of people, it was hard to find one. Ordinary people would find it very difficult to withstand the burning of that kind of fire. However, the young man in front of him had actually endured it twice in a row. It had to be said that this really surprised him and made him happy. He could even foresee that in the future, there would be a 9-yang divine physique that would sweep across the entire continent. Good disciple, master will give you a good fortune. The silhouette laughed out loud, then took a step forward and walked towards Lin Xian. In the next moment he merged into Lin Xian's body. Lin Xian was extremely astonished. He felt as if his power was rising limitlessly, and it was as if he had broken through to become a 7-star king tier. Soon he broke through to become an 8-star king tier and finally an invincible king tier. This feeling was very strange because his cultivation clearly did not increase, but he felt that he had the power of an invincible king tier. With your current cultivation and physique, feel the power of an invincible king tier for the time being. The voice of the glowing figure sounded in Lin Xian's mind. In the next moment, Lin Xian saw his body begin to move. Of course, this was not controlled by him, but by the 9-sun sword sage's silhouette. What? Lin Xian was shocked and overjoyed. He realized that the scene around him had changed. Countless dark clouds gathered in the sky, and terrifying bolts of thunder descended, bombarding his body like a lightning tribulation. However, he roared angrily, and mysterious runes appeared on his body one after another. They were like the sun, emitting boundless light. The lightning tribulation that filled the sky struck his body, making sonorous sounds. However, it could not hurt him at all. Boom! He punched out, directly shattering the lightning tribulation that filled the sky. Seeing this scene, Lin Xian was extremely shocked. Was this the power of the 9-yang divine body? It was too terrifying. The lightning tribulation was very terrifying. Lin Xian had never seen it before in his life. It could probably kill an invincible king tier. However, there was no reaction when it hit the 9-yang divine body. In fact, it did not even have to dodge. This made Lin Xian's heart skip a beat. Not only that, but the power of the 9-yang divine body was also terrifying. With a punch, a large amount of lightning tribulation turned into powder and disappeared in the sky. Lin Xian was shocked and overjoyed. However, this was only the beginning. The scene around him changed again. All kinds of natural disasters and earthly tribulations rushed toward Lin Xian. However, under the power of the 9-yang divine body, they were all destroyed. In the end, the surrounding scene even transformed into countless invincible kings fighting with him. In the end, the 9-yang divine body was unharmed. Lin Xian was truly astounded by this scene. If he cultivated the 9-yang divine body, it would be terrifying to the extreme. Thinking of this, he was extremely excited. The 9-yang divine body combined with the great dragon sword soul would definitely be powerful. These two things would be his greatest reliance on his path to becoming a great emperor in the future. Finally, the light figure slowly appeared from Lin Xian's body and landed in front of him again. However, at this moment, the light on the light figure's body was still very dim. Although everything you saw just now was an illusion, if you can reach that step, everything will become real. The 9-yang sword saint's light figure said in a deep voice. At present, I only have the first 3 levels. As for the last 6 levels, they should be in the depths of Black Demon Cliff. Due to some reasons, I can't have them. Don't look for them now and don't think about them. When you have enough strength in the future, you can go back to the depths of Black Demon Cliff to explore. Master, I understand. Lin Xian nodded solemnly. The 9 Yang Sword Saint's light figure said again. I felt an unusually sharp sword chi in your body just now. Are you a swordsman? Yes. Lin Xian nodded. The 9 Yang Sword Saint's lips curled into a smile. It seems that the heavens have treated me well. It allowed me to take in an extremely talented disciple here, and a swordsman at that. However, I also don't have the 9 Yang sword technique here. You will have to find it yourself. However, I feel that the sword intent in your body is not weaker than the 9 Yang sword technique. If I can obtain the 9 Yang sword technique in the future, I think I will be able to laugh at the world. Master, you flatter me. I will definitely work hard to find the 9 Yang sword technique. When I have the strength in the future, I will thoroughly explore the entire Black Demon Cliff. The 9 Yang Sword Saint's light figure nodded in gratification. However, in the next moment his gaze turned serious. There is one more thing that I need to remind you of. Back then, I had already cultivated the 9 Yang sword technique in 9 Yang divine body to great success. However, in the end I was still killed. Master, who was it that killed you back then? Who was he? Lin Xian was also very surprised by this question. He had already seen the might of the 9 Yang divine body. Just reaching the level of an unrivaled king was already so terrifying. Thinking about it, the 9 Yang Sword Saint back then was an extremely terrifying existence among sages. Who was it that had such great ability to kill him? Chapter 26:19. It was the great demon saint, a great demon. He was very terrifying. But don't worry. Although I was killed, he won't live either. However, you have to be careful of his descendants. Their lineage is very terrifying. If you want to walk the path of the great emperor in the future, you will definitely encounter them. You have to be careful. Great demon. Lin Xian was extremely shocked. Then he clenched his fists. Master, don't worry. If I encounter someone from the great demon lineage in the future, I will definitely kill them and avenge Master. Good, good, good. The 9 Sword Saint laughed loudly 3 times. Then he waved his hand. You can go now. Master, take care. Lin Xian's eyes reddened. He held back his tears and turned to leave. He knew that it was useless to let his emotions get the better of him. The 9 Sword Saint was no longer in existence. What he needed to do was to cultivate the 9 Yang divine body and let it reappear in the world. Outside, the dark red dragon waited anxiously. He had been waiting for several months. If not for the light in front of him that was still shining, he would have died. He even suspected that something had happened to Lin Xian. Damn it, did something really happen to this brat? The dark red dragon frowned. However, he soon shook his head. Impossible. That kid had many trump cards. Even if something happened, he should be able to escape. Moreover, the 9 Yang divine body was a terrifying thing. It would probably take a lot of time to inherit it. After all, he was from the ancient dragon race. He was knowledgeable and knew some powerful martial arts. No, he could learn them in a day or two. It was normal for him to take that long. Therefore, the dark red dragon continued to wait. A few days later, the light in front of him suddenly split open. A figure soared into the sky and flew out. He came out. Seeing this, the dark red divine dragon revealed a smile. He heaved a sigh of relief. That was because the person who came out was Lin Xian. After Lin Xian came out, the light that filled the sky disappeared. The stone sword that reached the sky also slowly sank into the ground. Then the entire valley healed again. It was as if nothing had happened. Whoosh! Lin Xian's figure flashed and arrived near the dark red dragon. How was it? Did you get the inheritance? The dark red divine dragon asked anxiously. After all, the 9 Yang divine body was a legendary physique. Lin Xian didn't answer. Instead he smiled. He stretched out a finger and crooked it. Come, try to attack me. Oh kid, you're pretty confident. Then don't blame me for being impolite. Seeing this, the dark red divine dragon's interest was piqued. With a wave of his dragon claw, a terrifying red claw flew out. Whoosh! Clang! The void cracked open and a sonorous sound rang out. Then, the dark red divine dragon opened his mouth wide because the red claw mark he sent out was shattered when it landed on Lin Xian. Oh my heavens, what's going on? How did your physique become so strong? The dark red dragon was stunned. You have obtained the inheritance of the 9 Yang divine body. He was extremely surprised. That's not right. You just received the inheritance, so how did your physique become so strong? Brat, what kind of defensive treasure did you get? No, it's just the 9 Yang divine body. However, I've already cultivated it a little in advance and circulated it twice. In addition, Master helped me a little. So now, my physique is much stronger than before. Circulated it twice? Kid, you're really crazy. The dark red dragon was speechless. This guy is really crazy. After obtaining the 9 Yang divine body, he actually started cultivating it on the spot. But what's going on with Master? Don't tell me you've become the 9 Yang Sword Saint's disciple? That's right. Lin Xian nodded. This is the second master in my life. I promised him that I would make the 9 Yang divine body appear again in the future. Alright, let's not talk about it for now. Let's leave this place first. Lin Xian moved his body and flew outside. The dark red dragon also followed. The two of them talked as they flew. Gradually, the dark red divine dragon gained a rough understanding of this. It seemed that the remaining 9 Yang divine body and 9 Yang sword technique should be in the depths of Black Demon Cliff. However, it was impossible to go there now. At least wait until you become an invincible king before you come to investigate. Okay. Lin Xian nodded. Now, just the first 3 levels of the 9 Yang divine body were enough for him to cultivate. It would definitely not be a problem for him to cultivate to the invincible king realm. The two of them directly broke through the sky and left Black Demon Cliff on the Black Earth. They did not wander outside but directly returned to the Immortal Palace. Because now, Lin Xian needed a large number of heaven and earth treasures to cultivate the 9 Yang divine body. Moreover, he was looking forward to this kind of divine ability. Therefore, he couldn't wait to return to the Immortal Palace. When Lin Xian returned to the Immortal Palace, the 6 protectors heaved a sigh of relief. They had already returned. When they learned that Lin Xian had gone out, they were extremely nervous. Because the outside world was very chaotic now, and even saints would appear. Therefore all the geniuses were dormant. After all, the timing was too chaotic. Palace Master, you're back. The people of the Immortal Palace went up to welcome him. Lin Xian nodded. 6 protectors, you're back too. He looked at the 6 protectors in surprise. Could it be that the whereabouts of the Yuhua immortal robe had been found? In the end, who would get it? The dark red divine dragon was also surprised. Because according to his estimation, it would not be easy to defeat the 2 saint corpses. How could there be a result so quickly? This time it was the 6 protectors' turn to be surprised. Palace Master, haven't you been outside all this time? Don't you know the news outside? They were extremely puzzled. Lin Xian said, when I went out this time, I encountered an ancient ruin and searched for it to cultivate. Therefore he did not know what had happened outside. Lin Xian did not mention the 9 Yang divine body. After all, it was too shocking. It was already on par with the Yuhua immortal robe. If it was exposed again, the great sage would probably gather at the Immortal Palace and attack it. Therefore, the fewer people who knew about this, the better. Next, the 6 protectors told Lin Xian and the dark red divine dragon about what had happened outside. When the two of them heard the whole story, they were stunned. Especially the dark red divine dragon, who jumped out. What? An intact saint weapon. Even a saint appeared? He was too surprised. He had thought that the great sage would bring their saint weapons and fight a great battle. However, that was only a battle between invincible kings. But he did not expect that a half-saint would come in the end. He even sneaked an attack on the Immortal Palace and almost succeeded. But in the end he was killed by a slap. A half-saint was killed on the spot. Just thinking about this scene made one feel terrified. Lin Xian's scalp went numb. Who did it? Was it a saint? That's right, a saint? Which Holy Land saint? Was he the one who took the Yuhua immortal robe? Palace Master, please follow me. Chapter 26-20. Only the few of them were left in the hall. Why was it so mysterious? Lin Xian was puzzled while the dark red dragon was surprised. Could it be that you guys got it? That's right, we did get it, but it wasn't us who did it, but the old palace master. What? The old palace master was a saint? Lin Xian and the dark red dragon were shocked, especially Lin Xian. He had seen Xia Juyo before. At that time he felt that this old man was very terrifying. In his opinion, he should be an invincible king at the level of a sacred leader. But he didn't know that he had underestimated the other party. The other party was actually a saint. A living saint. An existence that could kill a half-saint with a slap. Heavens, he was much more terrifying than those sacred leaders. The dark red dragon also trembled. He knew what kind of existence a saint was. He didn't expect the old palace master to be a saint. Damn, no wonder the immortal palace was so powerful. It turned out that they had such a foundation. The 6 protectors said, "Palace Master, you must keep this matter a secret. You must not tell anyone." This matter was related to the great sage lands and great sects. The saints of the other sacred lands and great sects had also appeared. If the news was leaked, it would probably cause unnecessary trouble. It would be bad if it caused a war between the saints. Don't worry, the two of us will definitely not tell anyone. Lin Xian nodded. Since the Yuhua immortal robe was obtained by the Immortal Palace, it couldn't be better. Because he was now a member of the Immortal Palace, and the master of the Immortal Palace. The stronger the Immortal Palace was, the more benefits it would bring to him. Lin Xian and the Dark Red Dragon heaved a sigh of relief at the same time. Fortunately, they returned to the Immortal Palace after returning from the Black Demon Cliff. If they wandered outside, it would probably be very dangerous. After all, it was very chaotic now, and many invincible kings were on the move. If they encountered the Yin-Yang sect and the invincible kings of the Tai dynasty, it would be really dangerous. Therefore, Lin Xian quickly went into seclusion to cultivate during this period of time. Firstly, he wanted to cultivate the 9-Yang divine body. Moreover, he also needed to cultivate the heaven-grade divine abilities that he had obtained. Just like that, Lin Xian went into seclusion again. This seclusion lasted for 5 years. During these 5 years, Lin Xian exhausted all of the heavenly treasures he had. He even used many of Immortal Palace's heavenly treasures to temper himself. He had just touched the threshold of the first level. It had to be said that the 9-Yang divine body was too difficult to cultivate. This was still because he was Immortal Palace's lord, able to use Immortal Palace's enormous treasury's resources at any time, and only then was he able to cultivate to this step. If it were anyone else, it would be even more impossible for them to cultivate. Putting aside the fact that he had to endure the tempering of the hellfire every day, that kind of pain was absolutely unimaginable. Moreover, the huge consumption of resources was too terrifying. It was not something that anyone could withstand. Perhaps only the Crown Prince and the Holy Sun were qualified to cultivate it. However, Lin Xian had also gained a lot in these 5 years. His physique and defense were definitely twice as strong. He didn't need to dodge ordinary attacks at all because they couldn't break through his defense at all, and couldn't cause any harm to him. Now, even if he encountered an invincible king, he could still contend for a bit. The reason for that was because his defense had truly become too powerful. This was something that he couldn't imagine before. This was only the first level. If he could cultivate the first level, his physique and defense would probably increase by several times again. Lin Xian didn't continue cultivating. Firstly, he felt that he had reached a bottleneck in these 5 years of cultivation. He wanted to go out for a walk. Moreover, he estimated that the outside world should have more or less calmed down in these 5 years. Presumably, those saints and invincible kings would also return. Therefore, on this day Lin Xian came out of seclusion. When Lin Xian came out, the people of Immortal Palace all rushed over to pay their respects. During these 5 years of seclusion, from time to time, they would hear miserable cries from the Star Palace. Those cries were all from their shop owner. They didn't know what had happened. There was even one time when Xing Tian wanted to forcefully break out of the formation. However, he was stopped by Lin Xian. Lin Xian told them that he was cultivating a cultivation technique and asked them not to disturb him. Hearing this news, the corners of Immortal Palace's experts' mouths twitched. What kind of cultivation technique was it that made their palace master cry out in pain every day? This was too terrifying. Only the Dark Red Divine Dragon knew that it was probably the 9-Yang Divine Fire burning in his body that caused that kind of pain. Thinking about it, this wasn't something that anyone could bear. Those experts and elders probably couldn't bear it either. This fellow was truly a lunatic. After Lin Xian came out of seclusion, he called back Huidao, Peacock, Ghostly, and the elite warriors around him. They all came back one after another. Lin Xian threw a big banquet. Firstly, it was to celebrate his great increase in strength. Moreover, he hadn't properly rewarded these people when they came back from the ancient tomb with him last time. Therefore, this time he held it together. Not only the headquarters of Immortal Palace, but also the other halls, Lin Xian sent out invitations. Those hall masters brought the elites of their respective halls to participate in the banquet. Now their view of Lin Xian had changed greatly. Previously, they thought that they were disdainful of a brat as the palace master. However, the things that happened in these years. They knew that although the person in front of them was young, his strength was absolutely terrifying. They weren't fools. Their intelligence network was extremely sharp. They knew very well that Lin Xian killed the saints of various factions and even killed the experts of the war race. The news caused the hall leaders to be utterly shocked. They even felt their scalps go numb. How old was the other party? He had already done such an earth-shattering thing. If he continued to grow, how terrifying would it be? It wouldn't be a problem for him to become an invincible king. Moreover, with his status and the support of Immortal Palace, it wasn't impossible for him to become a saint in the future. Moreover, not to mention the other party's strength, just the other party's status made them have no choice but to bow their heads. Therefore, these hall masters had gone willingly and wholeheartedly. However, there was an exception, and that was the third hall. Because the third hall master was in seclusion, he didn't know what had happened in recent years. Last time, when Lin Xian ascended to the throne, his son was directly killed by the other party, which was unbearable for him. He went into seclusion, preparing to break through and seek an explanation. Rumble. At the place where the third hall was, a secret room opened. Then a tall man walked out. His black hair fluttered, and his figure was as strong as a tiger or wolf. At a glance, he carried a powerful force. He finally broke through. Late stage 8-star. Moreover, he was in an extremely powerful state. He was even confident that he could enter the invincible king realm in the future. This powerful force gave him a lot of confidence. Come, follow me to the headquarters. Chapter 26-21. The people beside him said, "Hall Master, please take a look at the information we've gathered over the years. There's no need to look at it. Nothing is more important than my revenge." The third hall master waved his hand and sent those people flying. That might be the biggest mistake he'd made in his life. That was because the information on those jade slips included the news of Lin Xian killing the saint and the battle races experts. If the third hall master saw it now, he probably wouldn't find trouble with Lin Xian anymore. He might even be able to keep his life. However, he was very conceited and arrogant. He didn't read the news. Therefore, he was destined to have a sad ending. The third hall master led his men and flew toward the headquarters with a murderous aura. Immortal Palace was bustling with noise and excitement. Peacock, Hui Dao, and the others had all returned. Those Immortal Palace's martial artists were also receiving the people from the various halls. At this moment, the hall masters were very respectful. They didn't have any arrogant and despotic intentions. Lin Xian was very satisfied with that. It seemed that his achievements over the years made these people not dare to go against him at all. Not only that, every single person from the various halls had brought a gift with them. These gifts were all extremely precious. Although it was only one hall, the strength of each hall was very terrifying. If they took it out, they could intimidate a party. Therefore, each of them had many treasures in their hands. These hall masters picked the most precious few and brought them over. Lin Xian was very satisfied and smiled. What he needed the most to cultivate the nine-yang body and revive the great dragon sword soul were all kinds of natural treasures and divine crystals. Now that the various halls took the initiative to give him treasures, how could he not be happy? Seeing Lin Xian smile, the hall masters also heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that they would be safe in the future. However, at this moment, a voice came from afar. The third hall master had arrived. Hearing this voice, many people turned their heads and looked into the distance. They quickly began to discuss. The hall masters were also discussing through voice transmission. The third hall master actually came out of seclusion. Was this guy here to cause trouble? They all knew what happened previously. The third hall master's son provoked Lin Xian. He didn't even put Lin Xian in his eyes and even wanted to rebel. Therefore, he was punished by Lin Xian according to the palace rules. This made the third hall master extremely furious. However, the third hall master had been in closed-door training and had only come out now. From the looks of it, they were coming with a vengeance. However, there were also hall masters who shook their heads. That was impossible. No matter how arrogant he was, he wouldn't be so impulsive after looking at the intelligence reports of these years. Could it be that he thought that he was more powerful than the war clan's experts? That was indeed the case. The other hall masters nodded in agreement. In the past few years, Lin Xian's information and achievements had shocked them greatly. Even if the third hall master were to achieve a breakthrough, he would still submit to Zhang Xian. However, how could they have known that after the third hall master came out of seclusion, he didn't even look at the information before coming over? Up ahead, an aura fluctuated and the void split open. A figure took the lead and walked over. Behind him, other martial artists followed. The person at the very front was naturally the third hall master. There was even a murderous aura coming from his body. Seeing this scene, the surrounding Immortal Palace martial artists were in an uproar. The martial artists of the other halls also exclaimed in surprise. The other hall masters frowned. Why was this guy still so reckless? Where was Lin Xian? The third hall master came to the square and shouted coldly. His voice was like thunder, spreading clearly in all directions. Hearing this voice, everyone's expression changed. Huidao stood out and shouted coldly. How dare you? How dare you call the hall master by his name? Third hall master, are you thinking of rebelling? Don't threaten me with the palace rules. Today I'm here to seek an explanation. What right did he have to kill my son? The third hall master's voice was loud and clear. His body was full of murderous aura like a god of death. The aura of a late-stage 8-star king surged out. Feeling this aura, everyone's expression changed. A late-stage 8-star king was not a cabbage. He was a very terrifying existence. Those young martial artists retreated one after another, their hearts palpitating. The other hall masters also frowned. This third hall master had indeed broken through. However, did he think that he could cause trouble here just because he was a late-stage 8-star king? He was really courting death. Should he try to persuade him? The fourth hall master and the fifth hall master asked telepathically. The second hall master snorted coldly. If you want to die, you can die with him. Don't drag us into it. After saying that, he closed his eyes and stopped paying attention. Hearing this, the fourth hall master and the fifth hall master's eyelids twitched. They looked at each other and fell silent. At the same time, they quickly sent telepathic messages to their respective halls, telling them to stay far away and not interfere in this matter. Where was Lin Xian? Where was he? Did he not dare to come out? The third hall master was still shouting coldly. Right now he was extremely arrogant. In the distance in the pavilion, Lin Xian was playing with a few cranes. He held a few spirit fruits in his hand and kept giving them to the cranes beside him. Suddenly he frowned and looked into the distance. Who was making a ruckus there? He asked calmly. Hall master, the third hall master is here. Soon, a martial artist from Immortal Palace came to report. Hearing this, Lin Xian narrowed his eyes. Third hall master? Has he come out of seclusion? According to the news, the third hall master had just come out of seclusion and came directly to Immortal Palace. However, he seemed to be causing trouble now. Moreover, he seemed to be disrespectful to hall master. At this point, the martial artist from Immortal Palace lowered his head. Lin Xian's face darkened. He waved his hand and put away the spirit fruits in his hand. He snorted coldly. He really doesn't know what's good for him. Let's go and take a look. Lin Xian stepped in the air and walked forward. The dark red divine dragon also followed at the side. This guy really doesn't know what's good for him. How dare he come here to cause trouble now? Doesn't he know about your achievements over the years? He just came out of seclusion and is eager for revenge. Do you think he has the time to care about what happened in the past few years? He probably thinks that my strength has stagnated a few years ago. Lin Xian sneered. He could guess what the third hall master was doing with a slight guess. In the plaza in front, the third hall master stood there, roaring in all directions. The faces of those martial artists from the third hall behind him darkened. Honestly speaking, they did not dare to cause trouble even if they were beaten to death. However, their hall master did not listen to their advice at all. They had no choice but to stand here and bear the gazes of countless people. However, when they took action later, they did not dare. Who is it that dares to cause trouble here? Right at this time, an ice-cold voice came from the distance. Hearing this voice, everyone raised their heads. The third hall master also raised his head, the corners of his mouth curled up in a cruel smile. Brat, you finally came out. The others all shouted respectfully, paying respects to the hall master. That's right, the one who came was precisely Lin Xian. He stopped in midair and looked down coldly. Third hall master, you really have guts, actually daring to cause trouble in Immortal Palace's headquarters. Chapter 26-22. Guilty? What crime did I commit? The third hall master snorted coldly. What right do you have to convict me? Just because you're the master of Immortal Palace? You didn't get the position of Immortal Palace master with your strength. If it weren't for the old palace master, do you think you could become the palace master? The third hall master was very arrogant. Today I'm going to seek an explanation for my son. You want an explanation, right? Lin Xian sneered. Your son ignored the palace rules, publicly contradicted the palace master, and even wanted to rebel. Every one of them was a death sentence. I'm just doing things according to the palace rules. What? Are you dissatisfied? What a bunch of nonsense. How was that possible? The third hall master snorted coldly. He naturally knew what his son did. However, he wouldn't admit it. He had come here today to teach this arrogant brat a lesson. Otherwise, his years of cultivation and seclusion would be wasted. Humph, third hall master, if you continue to cause trouble, don't blame the palace rules for serving you. At this moment, another cold snort was heard. Xingtian walked out. His expression was very cold. Then he turned his head and asked, "Young master, I'll take him down now and enforce the palace rules." "No need, I'll do it myself." Lin Xian shook his head. He had just come out of seclusion and wanted to beat someone up to practice. He wanted to see the power of the nine-yang divine body. Who would have thought that the third hall master would actually jump out of nowhere? Since that was the case, he would use him to practice. "How about this? I'll give you a chance. If you defeat me, you'll have the final say. However, if you lose, you'll die. Are you willing to do that?" Lin Xian said coldly. That was because the third hall master was too arrogant. He didn't put him in his eyes and even openly provoked him. It was absolutely impossible to allow such a person to continue living. Otherwise, how could he continue to be the master of Immortal Palace? "You wanted to fight?" Hearing this, everyone was shocked. Oh God, was the palace master going to make a move? It seemed that he really wanted to kill. The third hall master, on the other hand, laughed loudly. He was too excited. The other party actually dared to make a move against him? He was now a late-stage 8-star king. He was extremely powerful. The other party was just a brat, a 7-star expert at best. No matter how talented he was, he would be able to surpass the limits of his cultivation. But how many levels could he surpass? Could it be that he could really be compared to him? He didn't believe it. "Brat, I have to say, you're really arrogant. You actually dare to attack me? Don't think that I won't dare to kill you just because you are the hall master. You can do whatever you want. Just use whatever trump cards you have. As long as you can defeat me, everything will be up to you. Of course, I've said it before. If you lose, you'll die. What's there to be afraid of? Come on." The third hall master snorted coldly and stomped his foot. A powerful force exploded and swept out in all directions. Immediately, the surrounding martial artists retreated one after another, afraid of being affected by this energy. So valiant. Immortal Palace's martial artists were all shocked. When they saw this scene, they couldn't help but worry for Lin Xian. However, the various elders and hall masters all started to frown. They had a different view from the younger disciples. They knew how strong Lin Xian was. The other party was able to kill so many saints and battle tribes elites. The other party's trump cards and strength were definitely terrifying. So what if the third hall master was a late-stage 8-star king? This third hall master was really courting death. Could it be that he didn't read the information from these years? It was very possible. Otherwise, he definitely wouldn't dare to fight with the hall master. I'm guessing that he'll be defeated within 1,000 moves. Those hall masters and elders discussed animatedly. They knew that the third stall owner had lost. On the other side, Peacock, Huidao, Ghostly, and the others also revealed a cold smile. He really didn't know what was good for him. They had followed Lin Xian all the way and naturally knew how terrifying Lin Xian was. Those people at the third hall master still wanted to remind him. They also knew some information from these years, so they wanted to remind him at this moment. They wanted their hall master to stop immediately. However, the third hall master turned his head and looked at those people. "All of you shut up. Get over there, don't be accidentally injured by me." This matter would be dealt with when they returned. He was eager to take revenge now. Why would he care about his subordinates? With a wave of his hand, a force wrapped around the martial artists at the third hall master and pushed them far away. Sighing, those martial artists at the third hall master landed on the ground. They shook their heads and sighed. Their faces were filled with despair. After doing all this, the third hall master turned his head and looked at Lin Xian, who was in the sky again. "Seeing that you're now the hall master of Immortal Palace, I'll give you face and let you have 3 moves. After 3 moves I'll fight back." "What, let him have 3 moves?" Everyone was stunned. Those hall masters and elders' eyelids were twitching wildly. This third hall master was really arrogant. He even dared to let Lin Xian have 3 moves? Who do you think you are? An invincible king? Fuck, there's such a reckless person. The dark red divine dragon, Peacock, and the others also rolled their eyes. They had seen arrogant people, but they had never seen such an arrogant person. Now, even those top saints and princes would not dare to say such words to Lin Xian. Where did the third hall master get his confidence from? Lin Xian also smiled. "Let me have 3 moves? You're really generous. Then thank you very much." A mere late-stage 8-star king dared to let him have 3 moves? One had to know that before he cultivated the 9-yang divine body, he was already able to kill a late-stage 8-star king. Now, after cultivating the 9-yang divine body, his strength had increased again. It was very easy to kill such a king. The third hall master snorted coldly. Light flowed on his body and directly formed a pagoda that enveloped his body. That pagoda was very terrifying. There were mysterious runes on it that kept flowing. This was a defensive divine ability called the Six Harmonies Pagoda. It was very powerful. Even martial artists of the same level could not break it, let alone the other party. He was confident that even with 3 punches, the other party would not be able to break through his defense. Therefore, after he used the Six Harmonies Pagoda, he stood with his hands behind his back and looked at the other party coldly. There was even a hint of mockery in his eyes. Lin Xian descended from the sky and walked towards the third hall master. When he was 10 meters away from the third hall master, he stopped in his tracks. He raised a smile. "Why, are you ready to defend? I'm going to make my move. Come on, kid. Let me tell you, you'd better use all your strength to attack. Otherwise, you won't be able to break through my defense." The third hall master sneered. The others rolled their eyes. Lin Xian also stopped smiling. "Since that's the case, don't blame me for being impolite." In the next moment, he took a step forward, and mysterious runes appeared on his body one after another. Then he threw out a punch. In an instant, Lin Xian activated the 9-yang divine body. This punch immediately shattered the void. A power of extreme yang gushed out, as if a sun was pushing across the sky. "Damn it, what kind of fist technique is this?" The third hall master's expression changed instantly because he felt that the other party's palm wind was too terrifying. It carried an extremely masculine power. Before the fist arrived, the terrifying aura caused the Six Harmonies Pagoda on his body to tremble. Chapter 26-23. Damn it, that's impossible. The third hall master roared and activated the Six Harmonies Pagoda crazily. Suddenly, the Six Harmonies Pagoda shone brightly, and the runes on it became even brighter. Boom. The two finally collided, and an earth-shattering sound was heard. Countless large cracks appeared in the sky and spread into the distance. The entire void shattered like a mirror, and black holes appeared one after another. The surrounding martial artists were so frightened that they hurriedly retreated. Poof. Crack. 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 The Six Harmonies Pagoda instantly shattered into pieces. The third hall master also screamed and was sent flying. Blood instantly dyed the sky red. The surrounding martial artists were all stunned when they saw this scene. Their eyes widened in disbelief. The young martial artists' minds were blank. The hall masters and elders were also shocked. They knew that Lin Xian was very powerful and that the third hall master was no match for him. However, they guessed that it would take hundreds or thousands of moves before the outcome of the battle could be determined. But now Lin Xian only used one punch. The third hall master was sent flying and was seriously injured. This was beyond their expectations. Even if the third hall master was passively defending and did not attack, the gap between them should not be so big. It's over. We've underestimated him. The hall master's strength must have improved by leaps and bounds over the years. Otherwise, it was impossible for him to be so powerful. It can't be. It's only been a few years and his strength has doubled again? The hall masters and elders all sucked in a breath of cold air. His talent and strength were simply too terrifying. Perhaps not many saints and princes had such a heaven-defying growth speed. Bang! Just as they were discussing, the third hall master landed heavily on the ground and shattered the void. He vomited large mouthfuls of blood. The bones in his body were broken and half of his body was blown up. His internal organs flowed out. Ah, damn it! He roared angrily and his body that had been blown up was restored again. Buzz. His body flickered with light and he wanted to counterattack. However, in an instant all the hair on his body stood on end. That was because Lin Xian was still in front of him. What speed! The third hall master's pupils constricted, and the martial artists in the distance also exclaimed. All they saw was a flash of light, and Lin Xian instantly disappeared. They couldn't even catch a trace of him. What? You want to make a move now? Didn't you say you'd let me punch you 3 times? This was only the first punch, there were still 2 punches left. Lin Xian's cold voice rang in the third hall master's ears. The third hall master roared angrily. He couldn't care about anything else. Go to hell. The other party's strength was so terrifying that even if he went all out, he might not be able to defeat him. Damn it, I was too careless. He was too careless. He didn't expect the other party to be so strong. It was far beyond his expectations. In fact, he had even surpassed him. How could this be? It had only been a few years. What had happened to the other party? How could his strength increase by leaps and bounds? He didn't know, but his life was the most important thing right now. With a furious roar, he struck out with his palm. At the same time he retreated. Lin Xian's face darkened as his eyes flashed with killing intent. Give me 3 punches? Do you think you're qualified? But don't worry, I don't even need 3 punches. The second punch will be enough to crush you. Boom. Lin Xian attacked again. The terrifying fist erupted with an incomparable light that was so dazzling that the surrounding people couldn't open their eyes. The light was so intense that it caused the third hall master's eyes to bleed instantly. He felt as if his body was being burned by a raging fire. Now he had no choice but to attack. He hurriedly burned his spiritual power and fled like a madman. However, how could he escape? That was the Nine Suns' divine fist. The fist was getting closer and closer. Seeing that he couldn't escape, the third hall master used his dharma treasures like a madman. Shields, pagodas, small cauldrons, and all sorts of defensive dharma treasures were used to block the attack. Boom. Boom. All the defensive dharma treasures shattered in an instant and turned into powder. The fist finally landed on the third hall master's body. Bang. The sky collapsed and the earth cracked. Thousands of bolts of divine lightning descended. It was a scene of destruction. The terrifying energy storm lasted for a long time before it slowly disappeared. When everything disappeared, everyone raised their heads and looked into the distance. Then they were extremely shocked. Previously, Lin Xian was standing there with his hands behind his back. There was a mist of blood around him. However, they couldn't get close to him at all. His body was long gone. Not even a bone was left behind. The third hall master was killed. He was an 8-star late-stage king, but he couldn't even block 2 punches. Everyone went crazy. At this moment, many people began to tremble, especially those martial artists from the third hall. They directly knelt on the ground and kept kowtowing. Hall master, please spare us. We were forced to do this. They hurriedly tried to distance themselves. Lin Xian turned his head and looked around. At this moment, no one dared to look him in the eye. Everyone lowered their heads. They felt a pressure from their blood and soul. It was as if they couldn't breathe. He was too powerful. Although the other party was young, he had already displayed supreme power at this moment. He was definitely an invincible king in the future. Lin Xian shouted coldly. Huidao walked out and knelt on one knee on the ground. Hall master. From today onwards you will take over the third hall. Is there a problem? No problem. Thank you, hall master. I will do my best to manage the third hall. Huidao's eyes lit up. It seemed that Lin Xian was going to support him to become the new third hall master. Lin Xian waved his hand, and the 2 items floating in the sky descended. Then he came in front of Huidao. This is the third hall master's token, and this is the Tang hall master's seal. Do a good job and don't disappoint me. Yes, thank you, hall master. After Huidao received it, his face was full of joy. Alright, get up. Lin Xian waved his hand, and a force wrapped around Huidao and lifted him up. Then he said loudly, let the banquet begin. The grand banquet began, and the originally quiet scene became lively again. However, the hall masters were extremely shocked and cautious. They didn't dare to make any mistakes. Otherwise they would end up like the third hall master. This banquet lasted for a few days before it slowly ended. After the celebration, all the halls left quickly. After returning to their respective camps, Huidao also left the headquarters with the people of the third hall. Lin Xian looked at Xing Tian. Is the old hall master back? I would like to see him. Alright, wait a moment. I will arrange it now. Xing Tian turned around and left. 4 hours later he returned. Young master, come with me. The 2 of them took the array and kept teleporting until they finally arrived at a quiet place. The hall master was like a divine red color floating above the clouds. Lin Xian looked at this scene in surprise. This method was too strange. Moreover, the surrounding spiritual energy was even denser than in the starry hall. Chapter 26-24. Taking a deep breath, Lin Xian flew towards the hall above. Soon he entered the hall. Xing Tian closed the door and stood outside. Greetings, Elder Xia. Looking at the figure in front of him, Lin Xian bowed. Not bad, not bad. Your strength has increased very quickly recently. Moreover, you have taken good care of the immortal palace. Xia Juyo said with a smile. Elder Xia, you flatter me. I came here this time because there's something I don't understand. Oh, is it a problem with cultivation? Xia Juyo asked. No, it's just that I found something in the ancient tomb but I don't understand it. I want Elder Xia to help me take a look. As he spoke, Lin Xian took out the beast skin scroll and handed it over. After Xia Juyo took it, his eyes lit up with a trace of surprise. This is? Lin Xian recounted the process of him obtaining the scroll. After hearing this, Xia Juyo's eyes flickered. So that's how it is. I didn't expect there to be such a thing. Elder Xia, what exactly is this? What kind of words are these? Why don't many people recognize them? This was a very ancient language. Not many people could understand it now. Xia Juyo's eyes flickered. He read it carefully and then he was extremely shocked. Nest of 10,000 dragons? There was actually information about the nest of 10,000 dragons here. It seemed that something was going to happen to the nest of 10,000 dragons. Nest of 10,000 dragons. Lin Xian was also extremely surprised. One had to know that he had been looking for this place all this time. This was because the nest of 10,000 dragons was the burial place of dragons. There were many dragons inside. If he could obtain it, it would definitely allow the great dragon sword soul to recover even faster. Then his strength would increase again. Therefore he had always wanted to find this thing. However, he only knew that the nest of 10,000 dragons was somewhere in the central continent, but no one knew where it was. He didn't expect that he would finally find the whereabouts of the nest of 10,000 dragons. Not only was there news about the nest of 10,000 dragons, but there was also news about the Yuhua immortal robe and the corpses of the two saints. The more Xia Juyo looked, the more shocked he became. Lin Xian was also surprised. However, this matter had nothing to do with him. He couldn't use the Yuhua immortal robe now. Therefore he only asked about the nest of 10,000 dragons in detail. Xia Juyo waved his hand and a jade slip flew out. He used his soul spirit to engrave the information on it. Then he handed it over to Lin Xian. This was the information about the nest of 10,000 dragons. It even had the location. However, with just our immortal palace alone, we definitely won't be able to take it all down. We have to find an opportunity to unite all of the true spirit 5 continents' great sects and take action together. The Wanrong dragon nest was not so easy to break. They had to work together. I believe that with your strength, it won't be a problem for you to do this well. Xia Juyo said with a smile. Elder Xia, I understand. Lin Xian took the jade slip. Xia Juyo smiled again. Do as you wish. Immortal Palace is your most solid support. Moreover, if there really is a dangerous situation, I will also take action. Upon hearing this, Lin Xian smiled. He now knew that Xia Juyo was a sage, a living sage. It was extremely terrifying. With Xia Juyo's protection as his backing, he wasn't afraid of those great sections. Next, Lin Xian left and returned to the Starry Hall. He had to make some arrangements. After all, this matter was too important. The commotion it would cause would probably be even more terrifying than the Yuhua immortal robe. After all, there was only one Yuhua immortal robe. The nest of 10,000 dragons was a huge treasure trove with countless heavenly treasures. It would definitely cause everyone to go crazy. As expected, when the dark red divine dragon learned of the information recorded on the beast's skin, he was extremely shocked. His eyes turned red. One had to know that he was from the divine dragon race. He needed the 10,000 dragons' annihilation even more. Kid, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and do it. We have to dig out the 10,000 dragons' annihilation. That's really a treasure of dragons. If we can get it, we'll definitely make a fortune. The dark red divine dragon couldn't wait. Lin Xian said that it wasn't that simple. Just a mysterious ancient tomb alone caused such a huge commotion. Many invincible kings appeared with sacred weapons. In the end, even sages appeared. The 10,000 dragons' annihilation would definitely cause an even crazier commotion. We have to make a good plan. That's right, I have to make more killing formations. The dark red divine dragon's eyes flickered. Next, Lin Xian called Xing Tian in and asked him to work with the 6 protectors to prepare for war. He knew that they wouldn't be able to enter in a short period of time. Even if they knew about the nest of 10,000 dragons, it was impossible for them to enter quickly. After all, the seal of a saint's ancient tomb alone was very difficult to break. It would take a long time to break the seal of the nest of 10,000 dragons. Therefore they had enough time to prepare now. Moreover, Lin Xian felt that they should find a few allies first. In the previous trip to the ancient tomb, he had killed many saints and offended many sacred lands and sections. Of course, he also made some friends. Therefore, if the Immortal Palace made a move alone, they would definitely be resisted by the 5 Elements Palace, the Tai dynasty, and the other sacred lands. However, if they joined forces with some other sacred lands, the others wouldn't dare to resist. Therefore, Lin Xian prepared to make a move in the near future. He planned to go to the eastern wasteland first and join forces with the Yi family, the Gu family, the Jade Lake Sacred Ground, and the Purple Dawn Sacred Ground. Then he would go to the western desert to contact No Flower of the Lanrua Temple and the 8th prince of the Tai dynasty, who was the current crown prince. He would also contact the Saintess of the All Beginnings Sacred Ground. If he could find Yen Ryu, that would be great. Get ready. We will set off for the eastern wasteland, Lin Xian said to the dark red divine dragon. This time the two of them would travel light. This way it would be convenient. Secondly, it would be hidden and wouldn't cause too much of a commotion. After all, before this matter was completely exposed, the fewer people who knew about it, the better. 3 days later, Lin Xian and the dark divine dragon set off. This time they didn't even bring Xing Tian with them. The two of them took the super teleportation array of the Immortal Palace and directly teleported to the eastern wasteland. The main force of the Immortal Palace was in the central continent, but they also had some bases in the other continents. Therefore it was very convenient to teleport between the 5 continents. With a flash of light, Lin Xian and the dark red divine dragon disappeared from the array. Outside, the other 2 battle kings of the battle race couldn't find Lin Xian, so they directly went to the mysterious divine divination sect and asked them to find traces of him. The divine divination sect was a very secretive sect that could deduce the heavens. However, the battle race was an ancient race, so it was very easy for them to find the divine divination sect. They spent a lot of money to hire someone to deduce, but in the end they discovered that the other party's traces had disappeared. This made them gnash their teeth in anger. The divine divination sect's explanation was that the other party should have returned to the Immortal Palace. The great sage lands all had peerless defensive arrays. Therefore it was very difficult for ordinary people to find him. Chapter 26-25. They had waited for 5 years. They had been cultivating near the Divine Fortune Teller sect. Finally, one day the Divine Fortune Teller sect reported that they had found traces of the other party. When the 2 battle monarchs heard this, their eyes glinted coldly as they tore through the void. That's great. After 5 years they had finally found the other party. Kid, you're finally out. Do you think that by hiding for so long, you will be able to escape our pursuit? The 2 sneered. They asked for directions and the Divine Fortune Teller sect gave them the Eastern Wilderness. He had been teleported to the Eastern Wilderness. What is this kid doing? The Silver Battle Monarch frowned. The Galactic Battle Monarch sneered. Who cares? Even if he escapes to the ends of the earth, he won't be able to escape from us. It's just the Eastern Wilderness. We'll go there and capture him. The 2 battle monarchs discussed. Then they spent a large sum of money to borrow the super teleportation array of the Divine Fortune Teller sect and headed to the Eastern Wilderness. Light flashed and tore through the void. The 2 battle monarchs disappeared into the sky. In a mountain range in the Eastern Wilderness, space tore open and 2 figures walked out. They were Lin Xian and the dark red dragon. As soon as they appeared, they steadied themselves and looked around. Lin Xian was filled with emotions. He had returned to the Eastern Wilderness. When he first came to the true spirit world from the Sky Marshal Island, he had first arrived at the Eastern Wilderness. At that time he had been hunted down and tortured. Now he was finally back. Let's go to a nearby city and find out the location. Then we'll set off. The 2 figures flashed and flew into the distance. At the same time, in another place in the Eastern Wilderness, the void tore open. The 2 battle monarchs of the battle race also walked out. As soon as they appeared, they emitted monstrous killing intent. Instantly, the surrounding mountain range was split in half. Kid, you can't escape. They took out a disc array in their hands. There was a flickering light spot on it. It was the disc array given to them by the Divine Fortune Teller sect. It could be used to locate the other party. Let's go. The 2 battle monarchs glanced at each other. Then they quickly flew into the sky and flew into the distance. Lin Xian and the dark red dragon flew for 5 or 6 days, but they were surrounded by vast mountains. There was no city at all. There was no other way. The eastern wasteland was too vast and boundless. He should have been teleported to a remote primitive forest. Therefore, it would probably take a very long time before they could see a human city. However, at this moment Lin Xian frowned. He had a bad premonition that he was being watched. The last time he had such a premonition was when he met Jianghu and the Sky Axe Battle Monarch. Damn it, could it be that someone had come to kill him again? Thinking of this, his eyes flashed with a cold light. What's wrong? The Crimson Divine Dragon asked when it saw Lin Xian stop and frown. We seem to have been targeted. Lin Xian said in a low voice. Be careful, they will be here soon. Who was it? Damn it, you dare to assassinate us? The dark red divine dragon was enraged as well. Not to mention that Lin Xian's strength had increased. The dark red divine dragon's strength had increased in the past 5 years. He did not believe that someone would dare to kill them at this time. Who could it be? The Yin-Yang sect, the Tai dynasty, or the battle tribe? I don't know. Let's set up the array first. Lin Xian shook his head. The crimson divine dragon waved its claws. Immediately, 2 killing arrays were hidden in the surroundings. Then the 2 of them stood in the sky and waited. Sure enough, before long, a powerful aura appeared in the sky. It was as if 100,000 mountains were pressing down from the sky. Then 2 figures appeared in the sky. The 2 figures were tall. One of them shone with silver light, like a giant in silver armor. The other one carried a galaxy with him like the king of the stars. The 2 of them descended, bringing with them the image of heaven and earth. The surrounding void started to crack apart rapidly. They were from the battle tribe. Lin Xian frowned and looked ahead. The crimson divine dragon snorted. Didn't the Sky Axe Battle King say that he had 2 companions? Damn it, they had been waiting here for 5 years. Lin Xian's face darkened. He did not know how the other party found him so quickly. After all, very few people knew that they had come to the eastern wilderness from the central state. It was impossible for a traitor to appear in the Immortal Palace. But how did the other party know? They must have found an expert who could deduce our fate. There were a few ancient sects in middle ground. The Crimson Divine Dragon explained. Hearing this, Lin Xian frowned. Divining the heavenly secrets? Speaking of which, it was not impossible. But in the next moment, his eyes shone brightly. A terrifying power surged from his body and shone in all directions. He was like the sun god of war, shrouding the surrounding sky. The Crimson Divine Dragon also roared. Its body expanded and roared in the void. The Silver Battle Monarch and the Galaxy Battle Monarch had rushed over. When they saw Lin Xian, a cold smile appeared on their faces. Kid, we finally found you. If you want to run, why don't you run? The 2 battle kings sneered. Lin Xian snorted. Run? Why should I run? I came to the eastern wilderness to do something. However, the 2 of you don't know what's good for you. How dare you come to me? Don't you know that I've already killed your other 2 battle emperors? Don't be so arrogant. Don't scare us. It must be the experts of the Immortal Palace who attacked. Kid, you set up a trap to kill the 2 battle kings of the battle tribe. No matter what, today is the day you die. Surrender obediently and come back with me. Perhaps you will suffer less pain. The 2 battle kings' expressions were cold. In their opinion, Lin Xian was able to kill the other 2 battle kings because he had brought an expert to ambush them. Otherwise, it was impossible for the other party to succeed with his strength alone. I brought people to ambush you? What a joke. Lin Xian snorted. The 2 of them had underestimated him. However, this was also good. They came to throw away their lives so he could take care of them together. He wanted to let the world know the consequences of daring to chase after him. The 4 battle kings of the battle tribe would all be destroyed. Kid, go to hell. The Galaxy Battle King snorted and waved his hand. Immediately, a large flag rose into the sky. It continued to enlarge in the sky, covering the sky and sun. It completely sealed off the surrounding tens of thousands of li. The large flag enveloped the heavenly palace and turned into a river of stars. It pressed down from the sky. The river of stars was vast and mighty. Stars flickered one after another inside, carrying an incomparably mysterious power. The entire void was shattered. Lin Xian and the dark red divine dragon also frowned. It seemed like they were going to be sealed. In front of my river of stars, you have no power to resist at all. Be suppressed obediently. The Galaxy Battle King held the large flag in his hand and continuously used techniques. The river of stars quickly spun, forming a mysterious star chart and pressing down. Chapter 26:26. Especially the Galactic Warlord, he sneered. That was because the galactic flag was a super Dharma treasure that he had refined. It was used to suppress and seal, and it was extremely terrifying. Even a late-stage 8-star challenger could not escape from it, let alone his opponent. You want to suppress me with a mere flag? How naive. Looking at this scene, Lin Xian snorted coldly. His body swayed and he rushed into the sky. The 9-yang divine constitution unleashed its power, and the tense pressure instantly disappeared. He changed his position in the sky and quickly came to the sky. Then he punched out fiercely. With a boom, the entire void shattered. Countless thunder and lightning fell. That punch was so terrifying that it could shatter the heavens and the earth. The void was torn apart like a piece of cloth. The Milky Way banner was also shaking non-stop. The sun, moon, and stars on it became dim and dull. It would shatter at any time. Damn it, how can this kid be so powerful? The two warlords' expressions changed, especially the Galactic Warlord, whose face was full of disbelief. Suppress. He roared and quickly formed seals with his hands. More power was injected into the galactic flag. However, Lin Xian's fist was getting more and more terrifying. It was like a sun that exploded in all directions. Boom, boom, poof. The galactic flag was directly penetrated, and a black hole appeared. The sun, moon, and stars in the sky shattered. Poof. The galactic warlord also took a few steps back and spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was full of horror. Impossible. Damn it, how can you break my galactic flag? He was too shocked. The silver warlord beside him was also stunned. He knew the power of the galactic flag. How could his opponent break it? Moreover, he broke it so easily? How did he break it? Lin Xian sneered. Can't you understand? Of course he broke it with a punch. As he said that, he raised his fist again and smashed it forward. Damn it. Galactic slash. Seeing this, the galactic warlord roared and struck out with his palm. Suddenly, his palm turned into a sky full of stars as if it was the universe. He wanted to cut Lin Xian in half. Boom. Boom. The sky fell and the earth cracked. This punch directly split the galaxy into two halves. Not only that, but the galactic warlord's arm was also broken in an instant. He coughed up blood again and was sent flying. Just two punches, and the galactic war monarch was injured. One of his treasures was also smashed into pieces. This scene caused the two battle kings to be in disbelief. Especially the galactic war monarch, who was completely dumbfounded. Damn brat, how dare you? Seeing that Lin Xian was about to make a move, the silver battle king, who was at the side, could no longer hold back. His figure flashed as he rushed over. The silver-white light on his body was monstrous. His entire being was like a god, shining with a supreme radiance. This was not his armor but his physique. What he practiced was a silver body. It was an extremely terrifying body refining technique within the war race. Furthermore, it was a divine ability passed down from the ancient era. Indeed, the Silver Battle King not only had a silvery white glow on his body, but there were also strange patterns that covered his entire body, making him look mysterious. Kid, be careful. This seems to be an ancient body refining technique. In the distance, the dark red divine dragon warned. Lin Xian narrowed his eyes. Ancient body refining technique? So what? See how I'll beat you up. No matter how strong the body refining technique was, he was not afraid of it. What could be more powerful than his 9-yang divine body? Kid, go to hell. The Silver Battle King was filled with murderous intent. His eyes were filled with a cold light. The silver fist in his hand was like a meteor, as if it was going to shatter the entire world. Boom, boom, boom. The surrounding mountains, rivers, and primeval forests split open in an instant. Everything within a radius of 10,000 miles had completely fallen. The mountain range that was tens of thousands of miles away continued to collapse. This punch was extremely terrifying. It seemed that he wanted to kill Lin Xian with a single punch. I'm not afraid of you. Lin Xian did not use any sword techniques, nor did he pull out the Dragon Source ancient sword. He still waved his fists and attacked. Boom. The two fists collided. It was as if a comet had crashed into the earth, making an earth-shattering sound. The earth within hundreds of thousands of miles was completely split open, and countless canyons appeared. This scene was too terrifying. In the primeval forest below, countless monster kings exploded and turned into a bloody mist. Their blood gathered into a river. It was very tragic. The dark red divine dragon and the galaxy battle king also put up their defenses to resist. Their eyes were like lightning as they looked forward. Silver battle body? Ancient divine powers? In my opinion, it's just SOSO. A disdainful voice was heard. You're courting death. After the silver battle king heard it, he roared angrily. He waved his fists again to fight back. The two of them exchanged more than 10 moves, and the sky and earth were torn apart. Damn it, how could his body be so strong? The White Cloud Battle King was shocked. This should not be. According to their intelligence, the other party was an expert in the way of the sword and his sword techniques were outstanding. Therefore, he was not afraid of the other party because he was very confident in his own body refining technique. No matter how strong the other party's sword technique was, it might not be able to break his body. But now, the other party did not draw his sword at all, nor did he use his sword chi. Instead, he used his fists to fight him in close combat. That really shocked him. If an ordinary person dared to fight like that, the Silver Battle King would definitely disdain him. He would destroy the other party with a single punch. Because his Silver Battle body was an ancient body refining technique, who could fight him in close combat? Unless it was a special bloodline power like the Sacred Physique. But now, the other party was able to contend with him. Not only that, but his arms were also numb and the blood in his body was tumbling. It was obvious that the other party was trying to suppress him. Oh, damn it. I don't believe it. If it was the Sacred Physique that suppressed him, he would admit defeat. After all, the Sacred Physique had been passed down since ancient times and he might not be the other party's opponent. But now he had never heard of the other party having a super bloodline. Damn it, could it be that the other party had also mastered a body refining technique? The Silver Battle King was extremely shocked. They had never collected this information before. In the distance, the Galaxy Battle King's broken arm had already recovered, but at this moment he was extremely shocked. He knew the strength of the White Cloud Battle King. He did not dare to fight against the other party in close combat. But the other party did it. Damn it, how did this kid do it? He could not believe it. The dark red divine dragon looked into the distance and was also shocked. Was this the Nine Yang divine body? It was too terrifying. He had only cultivated it for a few years and he was already able to contend with the Silver Battle body, an ancient technique? It had to be said that the Nine Yang divine body was too powerful and magical. Sure enough, the Silver Battle King's face was extremely gloomy because he realized that the other party's strength was getting stronger and stronger. He punched the other party's fist, but it did not affect the other party at all. Instead, the blood in his body was tumbling and his arms were numb. Not good. The Silver Battle King's face changed. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.